بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
وجاء فرعون ومن قبله والمؤتفكات بالخاطئة فعصوا رسول ربهم فأخذهم أخذة رابية.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Indeed, all praise is for Allah. We praise Him, we seek His aid, we seek His forgiveness, and we seek refuge in the evil of our own souls and of that of our actions, of our evil actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, none can misguide. Whomsoever Allah misguides, none can guide. And I bear witness there is none worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His slave and messenger. We welcome the brothers and sisters for attending the seminar today, which is entitled Return of the Pharaoh. And it can possibly not escape any of us with regards to the situation of the Muslims around us globally today, and particularly of that in Iraq. And while it is very easy to just watch and sit and watch the television or listen to the radio or read the newspapers and feel nothing but despair, then really this in itself is part of the plans of shaitan, to just sit and despair. But as Muslims, we have to be proactive, and Islam is a deen that requires, after belief, it requires action. And this is what we hope will be the fruits of this seminar today. And as we know that our revival is only found in our two source texts, and that is the Quran, the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Sunnah, the example and the way of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as one of the Sahaba used to say, that there is not a bird in the sky except the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us about it. Meaning that he has told us about this time, and he has told us how to get out of it. And again, this will be one of the lessons that we hope to learn from today's seminar, how to relieve ourselves of this situation. And the story of Musa alayhi salam is one which has many parallels with our situation today. His people were in a situation of humiliation, subjugation. And their story shows us how a people can be in that situation and can then be part of those people who are chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for salvation in this life and the hereafter.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. وصلى الله على النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل، يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم. فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we send peace and blessings upon Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and upon all those who follow the way of our final Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As you've probably seen advertised, Our talk topic today is taken from Surah Al-Qasas. We're not going to be covering the whole surah, but that's the part of the surah, which is a large chunk of it, which speaks about the life of Musa alayhi salam. The life of Musa alayhi salam was a story which the Prophet himself had to learn well and thoroughly to be a good leader, to be a good Muslim. And the companions themselves had to study it in detail. Surah Al-Qasas was revealed in Mecca. Other surahs as well cover the life of Musa alayhi salam. Sometimes there are parallels and sometimes there are different aspects which are covered. Surahs like Surah Taha, Surah 20, Surah Al-A'raf, Surah number 7, Ash-Shu'ara, which is about 26. Surahs like Surah Yunus as well. So we understand the importance of this surah, or of Musa alayhi salam. It's important for us to study it and take the lessons from it. It's more important that we hear the book of Allah though. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِي فَرَضَ عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنِ. Indeed, the one who has made the Qur'an an obligation for all of you to listen to, لَرَادُكَ إِلَى الْمَعَادِ. He will bring you back to your appointed place of meeting, which is the day of judgment. So that ayah teaches us, and it's in Surah Al-Qasas, towards the end, the obligation of hearing the book of Allah, and not forgetting that the training which the companions, and before that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took, was from this book. I hope we go away understanding how the companions could take 10 ayat and derive so much from them of practice, and how they wouldn't, and why they wouldn't move on until they'd practiced those 10 ayat. We start the surah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين نتلو عليك من نبأ موسى وفرعون بالحق لقوم يؤمنون إن فرعون علا في الأرض وجعل أهلها شيعا يستضعف طائفة منهم يذبح أبناءهم ويستحيي نساءهم إنه كان من المفسدين ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين ونمكن لهم في الأرض ونري فرعون وهامان وجنودهما منهم ما كانوا يحذرون. طاسين. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين. Those signs, those are signs of the book which is clear. It makes clear the path of good from evil. It makes clear the consequence of those people who do good, and differentiates between that and the path of those who do wrong. نتلو عليك من نبأ موسى وفرعون بالحق لقوم يؤمنون. I recite to you, Allah is speaking, from the news of Musa and Fir'aun with truth for people who are believers. إن فرعون علا في الأرض. Indeed, Pharaoh had become mighty and lofty in the land. وَجَعَلَ أَهْلَهَا شِيَعًا, and he had made the people there into groups and sects. Him becoming high and mighty in the land includes several things. His tyranny against other weaker nations, his tyranny within the land, the upper hand he gave to the Copts, the racism that existed, the weakening of the other people, the children of Israel who used to live there, which we're soon to mention. And greater than all of that, the fact that he used to say, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. He used to say, I am your Lord, the Most High. So he used to impose his creed upon the people, and they were obliged to worship him and his gods, as was mentioned in Surah Al-A'raf, وَيَذَرُوكَ وَآلِهَتَكَ. The leaving of you and your worship and the worship of your gods. The counselors of Pharaoh said, are you going to let Musa leave you and the worship of your gods? Which showed that the worship of gods was commonplace. Another way of reciting that ayah was وَيَذَرُوكَ وَإِلَاهَتَكَ, and to leave you and your worship, which showed that he was worshipped too. So he was the greatest God for them, to be worshipped by the Copts, the Egyptians, the natives there, and to be worshipped also by the children of Israel. He says, he continues, يَسْتَضْعِفُ طَائِفَةً مِّنْهُمْ. He weakened a portion of the people, and they were the children of Israel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that Musa alayhi salam said to Pharaoh later on, أَنْ عَبَّدْتَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. You are the one who have enslaved the children of Israel. This is Surah Al-Shu'ara. So their weakening was their enslavement. يُذَبِّحُ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيِي نِسَاءَهُمْ. He used to slaughter the children, and he used to let the women live. So it's not mentioned that the men used to live. The boys were killed, the boys were slaughtered, and the women were allowed to live, showing that their allowing to live was a source of huge torture for them, for the women. Because the women frequently are the ones who would care more and hurt more for the death of their boys. And perhaps they too were subjected to humiliation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. Indeed, he was of those who were spreading tyranny and wrong throughout the land. وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَّمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And I wanted to show my grace and favor upon those who had been weakened in the land. And I wanted to make them leaders. وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. And I wanted to make them the inheritors. The reason why Pharaoh was having the children killed, or the boys killed in particular, and allowing the girls to live, was because, according to one opinion, that there was some revelation which had been inherited from the times of Ibrahim, and obviously from the time of Yusuf alayhi salam as well. And that revelation spoke about the coming of one who would be born from the house of Israel, and that one would topple Fir'aun, that particular Pharaoh and king, and he would be the cause of sorrow for them and grief. So Pharaoh decided that he should have all the boys, the firstborns, all the boys amongst the house of Israel killed. That the children of Israel, wherever a boy was born, that boy would have to be killed and slaughtered without any mercy. Such was his fear, which shows us an important thing, that leaders in the land indeed do fear that the day when their civilizations come to an end is going to happen one day, and they try their best to perpetuate and to keep their civilizations lasting longer and longer. But if the civilization of Islam has come to the trough and the lower end, the ebb of its of its wave, then isn't it possible for nations who are weaker, who oppose the truth, that they too also will crash as well? And that is the sunnah, the way, one of the greatest messages of this surah and the surah of Musa alayhi, and the surahs about Musa alayhi salam, to teach the Muslimin who are in Mecca that those people who have the upper hand today can have their kingship and the establishment in their land taken away with ease, but the process is long. And those people through whom the kingdom will be taken away, the kingdom of the tyrants will be taken away, they have a long process of learning, struggle, and excelling in righteousness before anything like that can be close to them. So I wanted, the ayah continues, that I wanted, so ayah number 5, to show my grace upon those who are weak in the land, and to make them leaders, and to make them the inheritors. So there will be people one day who would take over the land of the kingdom of Egypt and Misr, to inherit that land. وَنُمَكِّنَ لَهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and we will give them establishment in the land. Establishment in the land includes the taking over and the inheritance of other lands as well. And so that I would show Pharaoh and Haman, his chief builder, وَجُنُودَهُمَا, and to show their soldiers, meaning the followers, مِنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَحْذَرُونَ, that what they feared was going to happen easily. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a project, a huge plan, which He wanted Pharaoh to visualize, and he wanted Haman and those followers of wrong to visualize that their wrongdoing and their tyranny in the land wouldn't go unpunished, and also it wouldn't go without them seeing their kingdom being taken away from them by those people they persecuted. Indeed, there is a lesson in this for nations who oppose good, but it needs those people who are good, who believe in righteousness, who believe in Iman, to be on that properly, to be on that truth properly. And if they're not upon that truth properly, then the danger is that tyranny will continue. And as we notice through this surah, through this surah and through the story of Musa alayhi salam, there's a huge concept, there's a huge theme running through it, which is that the people of good must always challenge wrong with a right. Whether it's a statement of evil or whether it's an attitude which is wrong within people's minds. You will find constantly through this surah that everything wrong is challenged with right and wisdom. Pharaoh was a person who had a great civilization. They had sciences, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about them at the end of Surah Al-Ghafir, Surah number 40. فَلَمَّا جَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُهُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ فَرِحُوا بِمَا عِنْدَهُمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. And when our messengers came to them with clear signs, they would be so proud about the science, the knowledge that they had been given, which shows us that them, the civilization of Pharaoh and other nations as well, were people who were advanced in science. We learn also about their advancement in civilization and their infrastructure, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ad-Dukhan, He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, كَمْ تَرَكُوا مِنْ جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ. How many gardens and parks and greenery, and how many springs did they leave behind? How many, meaning there was an enormous amount. وَزُرُوعٍ وَمَقَامٍ كَرِيمٍ. And how many fields of cultivation and fruits and honorable spacious homes did they too leave behind? Notice the parallel between this and some of the greater nations who have the greatest luxuries on this earth. It's easy for Allah to take away if they don't accept the true message. وَنَعْمَةٍ كَانُوا فِيهَا فَاكِهِينَ. And how many joys which they were lavishly enjoying themselves with, how many of those too did they leave behind? كَذَلِكَ وَأَوْرَثْنَاهَا قَوْمًا آخَرِينَ. And likewise, I made another people come and inherit all of that. فَمَا بَكَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ and neither did the sky weep for them, and nor did the land. وَمَا كَانُوا مُنظَرِينَ. And neither were they given any time, meaning to repent. And the other interpretation of that, neither were they missed. So we learn in those ayat, in Surah Dukhan, about their civilization, their spacious homes, their advancement in cultivation, about their infrastructure and their streams and rivers and their gardens and parks and joys and their entertainment. And we know about the civilization of Fir'aun. One of the integral parts of it were the magicians. The magicians who were forced to do their magic to prove to the public around them that indeed Fir'aun was the Lord Most High. He was to prove to the public around that he was the Lord Most High, and to put fear in the hearts of the public, so they didn't do anything to challenge him intellectually or in any other way, physically. It was also a form of diversion, the tricks of the magicians, to divert them from thinking and criticizing Pharaoh, which is similar now, where we have so many diversions which make the public numb from and unable, the minds are numb and unable to think and contemplate about the wrongs which are around them in society. People do feel oppressed. People do feel that in life's a huge struggle. People know there are huge amounts of wealth which they have no access to. And cleverly planned reports always show that money has been spent wisely, but still people suffer immensely. And one of the huge projects and objectives of Islam is to help people, help poor people, struggling people, wherever they are, whether they're Muslims or whether they are non-Muslims. So we hear about the huge resources and the wealth of Fir'aun, and that the magicians were there to distract people. So they wouldn't ask how the civilization of the pharaohs acquired these wealths, who they invaded, the empires they built, the countries they conquered to actually bring these wealths to their own civilization. And the resources they stole and raped other countries of. How that occurred wasn't mentioned. The people were too numb and too busy in their luxuries and the tricks of which is the fashion of the time, the magicians, and their clothing as well, the fashion. Because we know that the day when Musa a.s. wanted to have the challenge with the magicians was Yawm al-Zina, the day of beautiful clothes, which means the day of fashion. It was the fashion day, where everyone wore their best clothes. I don't know if they had the best hats at that time, but they wore the best clothes and they used to ordain themselves the most luxurious of materials. That was their civilization, numb, and thinking their mulk, their kingdom, would last forever. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, so Pharaoh gave prominence to his civilization, his people, the Copts, the Qubtis, the Egyptians, and relegated and enslaved the children of Israel for no crime of their own except that they were foreigners and that did have a totally different creed. There were people who were known to believe in the one God, the one Ilah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There were people who celebrated the fact that they did have a prophet called Yusuf alayhi salam. They knew that they had an inheritance, or they had a genealogy that went back to Ibrahim. So there were monotheists in the hearts. There were people who believed in righteousness and people who believed in the hereafter and in Jannah and in the Nar. But they were too weak and they had been subjugated for an extremely long space of time. And it's interesting how the fear of Pharaoh for the loss of his kingdom, it spread amongst his people. His soldiers knew about his fear and they feared as well. And Haman feared as well, his chief builder. And they were extremely intelligent people. But these extremely intelligent people who had wealth at their disposal and the kingdom, the greatest kingdom of their time at their disposal, still had huge weak points. Because it's only truly Iman that takes true fear away. As we learn through the surah, how fear is combated with Iman, true fear. And that a lot of the time when people combat fear, it's through false superstitions, things which aren't true. And that's why we live in a society where our minds are developed upon lies to tell us that the world is other than it really is. Whether it's the false cartoons and the fairy tales which we are brought up on, which have no relevance to society and frequently are immoral. If you read the stories of, if you remember the stories of Hansel and Gretel and other things like that, how immoral and cruel they are frequently. And the people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in this surah, who would eventually become the leaders, weren't leaders without qualifications. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Sajdah, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. And I made from them, and I took from them, the children of Israel, leaders, imams, to be followed. People who, whenever they as a people were patient, and they had certainty in my signs, which shows that the qualification for leadership, as is mentioned by ulama, is to have extreme patience in hardship and in doing acts of good deeds and in staying away from wrong, and to have certainty as well in Allah's signs, so that the unseen in your heart is almost real. But leadership isn't made for all those people. Leadership isn't promised for all those people. I took from amongst them people who would become leaders, who will be led. So the people as a whole has to have those two qualifications: extreme patience and extreme certainty. And from those people who have those qualifications, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings out leaders. So when we ask ourselves, where are our leaders? When we ask ourselves, why are our leaders not model leaders? It's because we as a people as a whole are people who are not patient and have not certainty in the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After Salatul Dhuhr, inshaAllah, we're going to go through a bit more rapidly the story of Musa alayhi salam from وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى أُمِّ مُوسَى. الحمد لله العزيز الرحيم وصلى الله على المبعوث إلى الناس أجمعين وهو رحمة لهم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, وأوحينا إلى أم موسى أن أرضعيه فإذا خفت عليه فألقيه في اليم ولا تخافي ولا تحزني إنا رادوه إليك وجاعلوه من المرسلين. Indeed, I inspired to the mother of Musa to give him milk, breast milk. And when you fear for him, then throw him into the yam, into the sea, into the river. And do not fear and do not grieve. Indeed, I am going to return him back to you, and I am going to make him one of the messengers. The inspiration which Musa a.s.'s mother received, interpreters say that it could have been one of two. Either she saw this in a dream, or she was inspired to feel that way, in the way that he inspired to the mother of Musa to give milk to the child. So when a mother has a child, she knows, she feels that the right thing to do is to give natural milk to the child. So in that same way as that is inspiration, she was also given a feeling and inspiration about the fear she had. The fear was that Pharaoh and his troops, his soldiers, were going around having the boys killed and executed and slaughtered. And there was no way that Musa a.s. could survive unless she had a plan. Around about the same time, meaning a few years before or after, Harun a.s. had been born. Somehow he had escaped the tyranny. Perhaps it was before the scourge began. The other possible meaning, or the other possibility is, as some of the Mufassirin mentioned, that the people of Pharaoh went to him and said, if you have all the boys killed, then the problem is that as the elders die, who do the work and they are the slaves of the society, who do the work in the building and everything that needs to be done, as the elder people die, if you do not have young people growing up to fill the shoes of the elder people, then no one will be able to do the work, and therefore will be out of work, and production will be low, And we won't have a society that flourishes as we have currently. So they thought of that problem economically. So they decided that we'll kill the boys 1 year and allow the boys to live another year. Again, that's a possible interpretation. It's a possible interpretation, not absolute. But anyway, the type of inspiration Musa a.s. mother received was one of those two types. And we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give you inspiration. It doesn't mean that Allah Azza wa Jal gives you revelation, because there's no prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma went to Ayman to tell her about the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, she wept. And when she wept, she said, they said to her, do you not know that where he has gone is far better than far better than the world? She said, I know that, and I know that is true. But what I also know is that the revelation has ceased to come down from above, from the sky. That was why she wept. So we know that as a whole, generally, there will be no new revelation, no new prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But we can be inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do things. That is the tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where He puts good things in your mind, where He puts the love of doing good in your hearts. And so when we say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, oh Allah, guide us and give us the hidayah to go on the straight path, we're actually saying, oh Allah, make known to us the straight path, inspire us with the knowledge, give us the knowledge and the love for the knowledge. And number two, we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to inspire our limbs and our hearts to apply what we know. But never are we to think that there is an actual revelation that comes to us. So Musa a.s. mother received an inspiration, a wahi, which is a discreet message, an inspiration for her to do good. That when she fears, the best thing she can do is to put the baby in a box. Rather than have the baby killed, perhaps there's a hope that Allah will return the baby back to me. And in her heart, she knew something also, that the reason for the scourge and the punishment which was going on was because a Saviour was going to be born. And it's the hope of every good mother that their son may be that Saviour, that may be the one through whom salvation, rescue and justice will be established. It should be the feeling, it should be the love of every mother, even now, to feel that within their hearts, that their sons and their daughters will be a cause of righteousness to spread in the world, and that they are imams, leaders who are followed by others. We ourselves should make dua like that. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا ومن ذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما is a dua we are taught at the end of Surah Al-Furqan, Surah 24. Oh our Lord, give us wives and give us children who will be the joy, or give us spouses and children who will be the coolness of the eye for us, meaning upon the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and make us for the muttaqeen, for other pious people, imams too. That is the dua, that your wives are righteous, your husbands are righteous, your children are righteous, and that we as a whole, as families, are guides, people who have exemplary values and actions, so other people will, by looking at yourselves and ourselves, will take guidance. They used to say about some of the A'immah, the Imams of the Salaf, simply by looking at a certain Imam, like the Sufyans or the Al-Awza'i, they were reminded of Allah. It didn't mean that by looking at the Imams they were reminded of the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That doesn't mean that at all, of course. It meant by looking at them, they were reminded of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even frequently now, when you mix with the people of knowledge and the people of struggling in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just by sitting with them and watching their behavior and watching their actions, you're reminded of the duties we're supposed to do. And which is why it's so important to have friends like that, people who have studied with them, people who believe in righteous actions, or people who are ordinary people, but ordinary and pious, like the story in the hadith of the Bani Israel about the man and the woman who had no food. And the man went out in the morning to find some food, or at least chop some wood by which he'd sell the wood and bring back something. While he was gone, a visitor came, an angel came, and built for them the means by which they can have bread and provision. They were ordinary people. So when he came back, he asked, where's this from? They were ordinary people. And we know Maryam alayhi salam, she used to get the fruits and the fruits and the cultivations of the winter when it was summer, presented before her. And vice versa, the fruits and the cultivations of the summer at winter time. And Zakaria would say to her, Anna laka hadha, where did you get this from? She would say, Huwa min indillah, inna Allah yarzuqu man yasha'u bighayri hisab. It is indeed from Allah. Allah gives provision to whom He wills, however He wills, how He wants to do it, without limit. So the important thing here is the importance of having that inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that happens by reciting Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim a lot. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ, give him breast milk. And when you fear for him, then throw him into the river. Throwing into the river is explained in another surah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He called the thing he was thrown in with or through a taboot. A taboot is, anyone on the floor? A taboot? A coffin, a box, yes. A box. A box. People of tafsir mention how the box was made comfortable for him with cotton and things like that. That's not so relevant here really. Whenever we read things from the Quran al-Kareem, we have the best opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best things and the most important things are mentioned in the Quran. Frequently you might read surahs and ayat of the Quran and you might ask yourself, well, why wasn't such and such mentioned and the other detail mentioned? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't reveal surahs to be storytelling. That's not the only thing, that's not the thing He's doing. If that was the case, there's so much to tell. But He brings in issues which will have moral guidance for us, instruction for us, where the people in Mecca particularly who were suffering, they could take guidance from that and apply that in their lives. They were doing that. They were taking Quran al-Kareem and analyzing words and ayat and parts of ayat and applying that the very same moment and the next day and for the next few days, and then they come back and see the next chunk how they can implement it in their lives. So she was told not to fear. That's normal in life. When we anticipate the worst, it's normal in life that we feel fear. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us not to feel fear. Teaching her not to feel fear, that you have to combat fear. Many times when you want to do good, your emotions, your fear, your dread of doing things, lack of courage most of the time, stops you and stops us from persevering. From the beginning, the mother of Musa alayhi salam is taught something which her son will soon to know. Which your son will learn, will be made to learn through prior to revelation and after revelation. He'll be made to learn how to combat fear. وَلَا تَخَافِي وَلَا تَحْزَنِي, and do not grieve. The importance of that is that in our lives, because we have so much sorrow in our life and grief, and we have fear, we anticipate the worst most of the time. Grief itself doesn't help. Grief breeds more grief. Grief breeds more grief. And you can have problems in your life at times where the door seems to be all shut and there seems to be no way out. So a person thinks about how they got there. They think about poor Musa alayhi salam going down the river. They think about Musa alayhi salam, how the worst might happen to him. The worst has already happened. My son is away from me. And now even worse things could happen, where he may be eaten by, he was picked up and killed by people, or other animals, or fish may ruin the box. Lots of things can come into your mind when all the doors are shut. You say to yourself, now the worst is going to happen. Now I know what's going to happen. What's the thing that individual, if they do grieve like that and continue to grieve, what happens is, what's the thing they're missing out on? The thing they're missing out on is tawakkul, to depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لو أنكم توكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير. If you were to depend on Allah the way you should depend on Him, then He would provide you as He provides the birds. تغدو خماصا وتروح بطانا. In the morning they go out with empty bellies and in the evening they come back with their bellies full. Will show us that that simple shift in our hearts in depending on Allah automatically guarantees you more aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before doing anything. And we're not on the issue of whether to do something with tawakkul or not. That answer is obvious even through the surah. With tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to get assistance from Allah by simply adjusting our hearts, thinking good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not thinking the worst is going to happen, and saying to yourself, if something worse does happen, then it's from the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to have your heart solidly with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trying to be pleased with whatever He decrees, then that is a way of getting assistance. And even if you can't be pleased but you're patient, then remember the hadith which is from one of the versions of Ya Ghulam, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ فِي الصَّبْرِ عَلَى مَا تَكْرَهُ قَدْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. You should know that if you are patient upon the things which you dislike, it's possible that through that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could grant you a lot of goodness. Great goodness, amplified and plentiful goodness. It's possible that when you're patient upon dislike, that Allah, the majestic Master, can give us things far better than we were previously experiencing. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. So when you're in that room and all the doors seem to be sealed off and there are only walls there, when does the exit sign appear? Whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and has taqwa and does the duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah creates the exit. Makhraja. Makhraj means exit. Allah creates an exit. وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And He would be provided from where he never expected for the provision to come from. He didn't expect it to come from over there or from under. But it comes to him still. Just through taqwa. So to tawakkul, as in the hadith, by shifting our hearts towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you get aid from Allah. He'll provide you as He provides birds. Just by shifting our heart, which is the value of tawheed. And through taqwa, the duties, and part of your duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your work and your efforts to fulfill the needs you need to fulfill. Your efforts, your sunnah. This sunnah mustn't be left of making physical effort. By doing that, Allah creates an exit. At the end of the ayah, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever depends on Allah, then Allah will be sufficient for him. Allah will be sufficient for him. When Allah is your hasb, then every move you do, you're happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you are still, you're with Allah and happy with Him. When you experience hardship, you're with Allah and you feel the pleasure of knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking after you. Because He is your hasb, the one who is sufficient for you. Wherever you go, whatever move you make, whether you're sitting or sleeping, Allah, the Majestic One, is your hasb. But it is possible that you can have trials where all the doors seem to be closed. There are no doors which seem to have appeared. And you have applied taqwa and tawakkul. And still the doors may not open straight away. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests some of His slaves like that because of His love for them. Because He wants to hear you calling Him. Because if the doors weren't closed, you wouldn't be calling Him. And He wants you to be calling Him for His love for you. He wants you to get close to Him. So keep calling Him, keep asking Him. And it doesn't mean that when we encounter someone who has a problem, we don't assist them. As some of the ideas, the explanation of the rest of the surah will clarify. Indeed, I'm going to bring him back to you, and I will make him one of the messengers. فَالْتَقَطَهُ آلُ فِرْعَوْنَ لِيَكُونَ لَهُمْ عَدُوًّا وَحَزَنًا إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا كَانُوا خَاطِئِينَ وَقَالَتِ امْرَأَةُ فِرْعَوْنَ قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ لا تقتلوه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا وهم لا يشعرون. So the Al of Fir'aun picked up the box, or picked up Musa alayhi salam. The Al can be the followers, could be in the family. The strong opinion is this was one of the followers of Fir'aun who picked the box up so that eventually he would be an enemy and a cause of sorrow for them. Meaning not knowing the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not knowing that while they were spreading this scourge in society, having all the boys killed, that actually the plan of Allah was underway. The long-term plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was underway, by which that their very hands, through their very hands, would their destruction take place. That they were doing everything wrong to maintain their kingdom. They should have discarded that box immediately if they wanted their kingdom to survive. But look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans, using the Muslims, using the non-Muslims. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, so the people of Pharaoh picked up the box so that eventually he would become an enemy to them and a cause of sorrow for them because their kingdom would be diminished. إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا كَانُوا خَاطِئِينَ. Indeed, Pharaoh and Haman, the builder, and his soldiers, or their soldiers, indeed they were sinful. Because the reason why Musa a.s. would be a cause of sorrow for them and a cause of enmity, why he would be an enemy to them, wasn't because Musa a.s. was spiteful, or this sensation, or this feeling which we sometimes get amongst people who speak about, let's say, the Old Testament, the jealous Lord, the Lord that is tyrannical and cruel. No, it's because of the sins of the people. Allah says, Allah the Majestic One says, indeed Pharaoh and Haman and his soldiers, indeed they were khati'een, people who were in excessive sin. So what was the cause of Musa being an enemy to them, except for their own sins and their disobedience to Allah? If they had been good to Musa a.s. and accepted his message, then they would have kept their kingdom. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have blessed their kingdom even more. Which is a sunnah which prevails even now. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala justified the reason why Musa a.s. would be a cause of sorrow. And not that messengers are anything but mercy. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is described in the Quran al-Kareem as Rahmatul lil Alameen, a mercy, a cause of kindness to the world, to everyone, all human beings, even animals and trees. وَقَالَتِ مُرَأَةُ فِرْعَوْنَ قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ. The wife of Pharaoh, of Fir'aun, Asiya, she said, what a delight to my eye and a delight to your eye too. لَا تَقْتُلُوهُ. Do not kill him. عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا. Perhaps he will be of benefit to us. أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Or perhaps we can take him as our son, but they didn't realize. Which means that the wife of Fir'aun, immediately she felt love for the child. As Allah says in another surah, in Surah Taha, وَأَلْقَيْتُ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِّنِّي. And I threw upon you love from me. And the explainers of that ayah from the Sahaba, they said, whoever saw Musa alayhi salam loved him. Anybody who saw Musa alayhi salam loved him, Muslim or non-Muslim, believers or non-believers, Israelites or Copts, they all loved him. They couldn't help that. So she said, do not kill him. Meaning instinctively, they knew that this was an Israeli boy. They knew this was an Israeli boy. By clues, they could tell that. But immediately, Musa alayhi salam's Asiya alayhi salam, she felt love for the child and immediately expressed that love before Fir'aun had time to think. قُرَّةَ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ. A joy for my eye and a joy for your eye too. لَا تَقْتُلُوهُ. Do not kill him. So she affirmed the truth, which is that it was a joy for her eye and her heart. And before Fir'aun had time to think, she expressed, as if she's saying, isn't he a joy for your eye too? And Allah said in Surah Taha, and I threw upon him, upon you, Musa alayhi salam, mahabba minni, love from myself, which meant that everyone who saw you loved you. So it's as if when Fir'aun was being asked that or being told that he is a joy for our eyes, he looked at the child and felt deep love and happiness for that child. Happiness that that child should live and not die. So he made an exception. He made an exception to tyrannical rule of scourge and killing of the boys. Asa an yanfa'ana. Perhaps he can be of benefit to us. And you will notice this a lot. How people sometimes say things without realizing the reality of what their words mean. When Asiya alayhi salam was saying, perhaps he can benefit us. Of course it's going to benefit her. Through him she would learn how to get to Al-Jannah. Through him she would get a shahada and the house near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in paradise. That was the huge benefit that would come from Musa, or via Musa alayhi salam. أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدَهَا. Or perhaps we can take him as a son. Pharaoh couldn't have children, or he couldn't have sons. He was very concerned about who would be the male heir to his throne. So Musa alayhi salam wouldn't inherit the tyrannical rules and regulations, but him and his people would inherit that land. So in a sense he was a son who would inherit the land but not inherit the tyranny. And they did not realize, ayah number 9 ends. They did not realize what they were doing. They did not realize the reality of Pharaoh's wife's words. They did not realize that they were actually beginning to rear the person who would be the cause of their nation's downfall. And that in itself is a huge parallel, as you know. How in so many Muslim countries we find people are unable or not allowed to practice their deen properly by leaders who claim to be Muslim but close every door of Islamic learning. So much so that if a foreign country who claims to uphold justice and democracy wants to topple them, there is ample evidence of how these people have been tyrannical and have been cruel to their people. There is no justice in the hand of most of the Muslim leaders who are around at this time. And those people who engage in this are actually opening the door to be toppled by others. As an ayah says in the Quran, كَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْضَ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضًا, which is actually about the hellfire. About how in the hellfire some wrongdoers will be made to be punish other wrongdoers. But isn't that a sunnah, a pattern we see in the world now here today? That when people, nations, when leaders are wrongdoers and evil, other wrongdoers come along and Allah punishes them through them. That's something that continues. It doesn't mean necessarily that one is better than the other, or it doesn't mean necessarily that it doesn't mean that the ones who toppled are justice. The ones who won, got victory, that they are the ones who Allah is pleased with or He loves. But that's the sunnah on earth, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defeats some nations with other nations. Or you as an individual, you may find that someone who's probably, you might think to yourself, he's a scum of the earth, he got one over you, hurt you, deceived you, brought pain to you. And you thought to yourself, how could this happen? The person might even say, or the waswas of shaitan might be, how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow this to be a test for me to cope with? And the person, when they contemplate on that ayah, it is such that some wrongdoers will have others over themselves, meaning punishing them. If you contemplate on that ayah, then the person asks themselves and wonders, really, was I a wrongdoer then? Perhaps I was. And it is important to admit sin, and that's something which we should come to inshallah soon. وأصبح فؤاد أم موسى فارغا إن كادت لتبدي به لولا أن ربطنا على قلبها لتكون من المؤمنين وقالت لأخته قصيه فبصرت به عن جنب وهم لا يشعرون. Musa's mother's heart was empty of all thoughts except for her beloved child, Musa alayhi salam. And she almost disclosed that. If it wasn't for me tying her heart up, putting a tie on her heart so that she would be of the believers. So Musa alayhi salam's mother knew her child was now, or had been floating down the river. And it wasn't for her to know, or she couldn't have known whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to be controlling that river or not. And it's easy for a person to have the wiswas of shaitan again, telling her that the river will probably drown him. Her heart was empty, like we say hollow, empty, except for concern for Musa, which is the nature of mothers when something happens to their children. But she almost disclosed it. She almost said, have you seen my child? Have you seen my baby boy? So that people might say, you mean you have a baby boy who hasn't been slaughtered? Who hasn't been killed? You actually had a baby boy and you tried to defy the command of Pharaoh? Let's find out about him. If it was found out, then the possibility was that the plan which was growing slowly, the plan which was gradually rising up the curve, which was the eventuality of which would be the toppling of Pharaoh. The Pharaoh would be toppled and Musa a.s. people would be led into freedom. If Musa a.s. mother had disclosed that then, it would have been the end of everything. But Musa a.s. mother had her heart tied by Allah. She had a natural emotion in her heart. She wanted to fulfill that emotion. She wanted to see her child back. But yet for her to act upon that emotion without guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have been perilous for the message. So do we understand that frequently when we ourselves, out of our love and our passion for Al-Islam, when we think we can say what we want to say because we're on the truth, sometimes we say arrogantly, or we do what we want to do wherever we want to do, thinking that Allah is with us, thinking that we are allowed to do what we want to do because they are the wrongdoers, they are the kuffar. Do we not see that if Allah does not tie your heart, you may do something which will be detrimental in the rise, or for the rise of this nation, of these people to righteousness and salvation? Every single one of us, before we talk, before we do, before we represent deen in any way or form, we have to think, are we following guidance or just sincere emotion? Sincere emotion, if it's coupled with guidance and revelation, then there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you must have feeling in following a revelation and passion in following revelation. But sincere passion without guidance can have devastating effects. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from above the arsh sent down the tying of Musa alayhi salam's mother's heart so that she would not ruin and cause this message to fall in its early days, in its earliest days. So there's a huge message in that for us to always make sure, whichever stage we're in, which we're traversing through, to understand how Quranically and according to the Sunnah we are meant to behave, and not arbitrarily comparing ourselves to situations in history and in the Quran and Sunnah without good right scholarship, and then saying we have to do this now. And the emotions start firing, and before we know it, we put back our ummah 15 years or 50 years. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tied her heart so that she would be of the believers, showing that when you resist impulses which may be detrimental, which may even be natural impulses, and there's all sorts of natural impulses which we are tested with. When we resist natural impulses and have Allah, the majestic Lord and Master, tie our hearts and put firmness in our hearts, that is how we climb the scales of Iman, so that she would be of the believers. So if we want to be of the believers, we must combat our natural impulses if they go against revelation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tie our hearts with Iman, and to make our hearts firm in following His revelation, and to make us follow His revelation with passion and not be passionate without revelation. Ameen. But she said to her daughter, again, qadr. A person doesn't just simply depend on qadr. A person needs to apply strategies, thinking, thought, planning. She said to her daughter, "Qussi, follow him or follow the box." فَبَصُرَتْ بِهِ عَنْ جُنُبٍ وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. And then they saw the box, or she saw the box from far away. Junub here can have two meanings. Could mean at the side, meaning at the side of the bank. Or it could also mean from far away, and junubin, from far away, and they did not realize. So she could see what was happening to the box and to the baby, how the baby had been taken up into the hands of Pharaoh, of Asya, and how he had now been accepted into the household and loved by everyone. وَحَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِ الْمَرَاضِعَ مِنْ قَبْلُ فقالت هل أدلكم على أهل بيت يكفلونه لكم وهم له ناصحون. But previously I had prohibited that she could take milk, that he would be able to take milk from anybody else. So she said, the daughter said, "Shall I not take you to a lady of a family who will look after him and they will be extremely good to him?" So you can imagine if this baby wasn't able to take milk from anybody and wasn't getting his sustenance, he'd be extremely hungry, and babies cry when they're hungry. And the crying would affect everyone because whoever saw him loved him. So it was causing everyone to be agitated. They weren't getting annoyed with the baby, but they wanted that dear and beloved baby to stop crying and be that sweet little baby which he appears to be. So that was the opening. Musa alayhi salam's sister went there saying, "Shall I not tell you or guide you to a woman from a family who will be good to her, who will look after him, who will look after Musa alayhi salam, and they'll be extremely sincere to him." Nasihun. The word nasihun from the word nasiha. Nasaha. Nasaha means to give advice. When you look at the origin of the word nasaha, it's the opposite of treachery. Opposite of treachery. To give nasiha to someone is mean you're not being treacherous to them. When you say to someone, "Brother, I'd like to give you some nasiha please for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Yeah, it means I want to do something which is the opposite of an act of treachery. Which shows that when you give nasiha, don't be treacherous. Don't hurt the person unnecessarily. Let not your nasiha, your advice to someone, be a way of you getting one over the other person. Otherwise that's not nasiha. Nasiha is where treachery is taken away. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ad-deen nasiha." Religion itself is nasiha. They said, "Liman?" To who? He said, "Lillahi wa li rasulihi." So if you translate the word nasiha to mean advice, what would that mean? The answer would be, religion is nasiha, advice. Advice to who, they asked? Advice to Allah. How can you give advice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How are you or I or anyone going to give advice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yeah? He says in Surah Al-Anbiya, an ayah which translates as the meaning is, the Arabic's gone, he will not be asked about what he does, but you will be asked. How can you not give advice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So if you look at the origin of the word nasiha, it means to remove treachery. So it means religion is the removal of treachery. That's what the Prophet ﷺ explained it as. If you want to understand religion, take away treachery from your hearts. To who, they asked? To Allah. Don't betray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't betray your master and creator, the one who looks after you constantly. And to the messenger, don't betray him. Let him be your imam, your greatest imam. And to the book of Allah, don't betray the book of Allah by abandoning it, and by not reading it, and by not applying it in your lives and teaching it to others. And give nasiha to the a'immat al-muslimin, Muslim leaders. Muslim leaders, as long as they don't fall into kufr and major kufr, the obligation is not to be treacherous to them. And even when they do fall into major kufr, it's out of whatever the Muslimin do in that case. If they have the ability to, or if they don't have the ability to, it's out of lack of treachery, or the absence of treachery in their hearts, where they can't allow someone to be a false god besides Allah. And the hadith continues, nasiha to the Muslimin as well, the ammat al-Muslimin, ammatihim, to the public, that you should show a nasiha, nasaha, remove treachery in your hearts with regards to the rest of the Muslims. So When Musa alayhi salam, when his sister said, indeed this family will be nasihun to him, will be of the nasihun. There will be people who will have no treachery in their hearts. They're extremely sincere, kind, caring and loving people. She wasn't lying about that, because that is the way the children of the Anbiya, people from the lineage of the Anbiya, who kept to the standards and kept to the moral teachings which they had inherited from their forefathers. That was the standard, they were the standards they upheld. And we will learn more, inshallah, about those standards which they inherited and which they applied where possible by choice. فرددناه إلى أمه كي تقر عينها ولا تحزن ولتعلم أن وعد الله حق ولتعلم أن وعد الله حق ولكن أكثرهم لا يعلمون. So I sent him back to his mother. They agreed, in other words. He was allowed to be with his mother, and by that his family once again to be looked after by her as a nurse, so that her eye would be filled with joy and satisfaction, and that so she would not grieve, and so she would know that the promise of Allah is true. But most of them do not know. From the issue of defects, the defect of Musa alayhi salam, that apparently he couldn't take milk from others. A lot of people, when they see children with apparent defects, they feel sad about that. But do you know, perhaps through that defect, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will something beneficial to happen to you and to your family. So whenever you see your children around you with apparent defects, don't be too harsh when you see that defect. Unless that defect is blatant disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then in that situation you do what needs to be done to set that right. It's for that individual to go on the course of change, and as you know from the story of Musa alayhi salam, the course of change can be a long one. So anyway, what we learn is that in Qadr, when things happen to us which we don't expect, which aren't sweet and perhaps bitter and difficult for us to deal with, it could be, again, that through that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us a lot of goodness. There was no way perhaps of Musa alayhi salam going back to his mother except through that defect. Well, they naturally felt, well, there's nothing wrong with us giving up this child or allowing this other nurse to look after Musa alayhi salam, because no, he needs to eat, and we all eat and drink, so he needs to drink, and we all love for him what we love for ourselves. We feel so much love for him, we don't want to hear him wailing and screaming out of hunger. So even though the beloved baby was taken away from them for a while, where there's two interpretations, that either she moved into the palace or the baby was allowed to go back to the family itself. But either way, they actually felt this love and satisfaction and happiness that the baby had gone. Now, all those psychological changes and effects in the hearts of those individuals through that defect which Musa apparently had, the apparent defect of Musa alayhi salam. So it's possible again. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we become people who make use of all the positive points and the faculties He's given us, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns our defects into things by which we can serve Him too. Ameen. So I returned him back to his mother so her eye would feel coolness, and that so she would not grieve, and so that she would know the promise of Allah is true. But most people do not know. Now, Musa alayhi salam's mother alayhi salam was a righteous woman, was a woman who received a form of inspiration, a positive inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She was from a lineage of Tawheed, where they worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and believed in the prophets and believed in the last day. It says at the end of in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so that she would know that the promise of Allah is true. Did she not know already that the promise of Allah is true? Musa alayhi salam's mother, being a person of Tawheed, would she not know already that Allah's promise is true? Would she think for a moment that Allah lies when He promises? The point here is that there are levels of knowledge, and that when people experience knowledge and practice it and apply it in their lives, there is a learning that comes down to them which you can't receive simply through books. initially, when you learn, your learning has to be through wahy. Quran, Sunnah, Hadith, explanation of ulama, the practices of the righteous. But it's only when you implement that you get the extra knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An extra feeling, a sensation of loving that truth. A deeper understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So much so that if there's two people sitting down, you can explain to both of them about Allah's majesty and His kindness and His punishment and power. But it's only the one who goes away and practices that in his life that he will feel that knowledge, or she will feel that knowledge in their heart. So true knowledge and true learning only occurs through implementation. So if you were to sit behind a desk all your lives, reading explanation of Quran and Hadith, and not applying that in your life, you will not be like the person who applied that. There is a pouring that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a learning, a ma'rifah, an understanding, a basira, an insight that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the knowledge, about truths, about reality, which wouldn't have happened by simply reading black upon white. But you can't receive knowledge just like that. You can't be a person who expects that just by learning, just by being a good person through their fragile and little knowledge of Islam, that they will start learning. That's not the point. The point is the actual facts, the dimensions, the parameters come from the revelation itself. But that tawfiq that comes into the heart, that love for truth that comes from the heart, that is another level of learning which is only given for those who practice. So are we going to be of those people who practice? Are we going to be of those people who want that higher level of knowledge? Wallahi, you know people who've travelled to different countries, or would love to travel, or they want to learn under Shaykh X, Y and ABC, but they feel in their hearts after years, I don't know anything. They don't even have that tama'nina in their hearts, that satisfaction, that calmness, or the khushu and khashya, the fear and the tranquility which Islam is supposed to give us. أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ, the one who Allah's heart, Allah expands their heart to Islam. With Islam and practice of Islam, there should be sharh al-sadr, expansion of the chest, a comfort zone in your heart. Not comfort zone, the whole heart should be like a world full of comforts and happiness and joy with iman, even though trials are going on around you. Don't those people realize that true learning is by applying what you know now? And even so many students of knowledge, even scholars sometimes, after years of learning and practice, learning and studying and researching, sometimes they find their treasure is in some ayat which we would say are simple ayat. Ayat which we might read through and say, well, I know that. I've heard that before in the talk. I went to a talk the other day and I heard that, so that's not new. But they will find that in that ayah, which we said, oh, I went to the talk the other day and I heard that, I already know that. That ayah for them is dearer to them than the heavens and the earth, giving them so much iman and learning. So this concept here, of that true learning is practice, is something which a theme that goes throughout the Quran. In Surah An-Nisa, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about those people, ليست التوبة الذين يعملون السوء بجهالة إنما توبة للذين يعملون السوء بجهالة. Indeed, tawbah, repentance, is for those people who do evil and wrong out of ignorance. So does that ayah mean that there's no tawbah for you? You can't repent to Allah if you intentionally did something wrong? You intentionally did something wrong? You didn't fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah was watching you and that He is above you watching everything? There's no tawbah for you? How can that ayah mean that when He says in another ayah, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَصْرَفُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. O worshippers, my servants and slaves, who've done so much wrong to yourself, do not lose hope of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sin. Indeed, Allah is the most forgiving, the most merciful. And this ayah, other ayah in the Nisa, is saying, Tawbah is only for those people who do sins ignorantly. Sahaba of Rasulullah the Sahaba radiallahu anhum met together once and they discussed this ayah and they all agreed that every person who sins, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is ignorant. He is the one, or she is the one who is ignorant. Tawbah is for the people who do sin out of ignorance, and then they repent soon. Soon here, qareeb here means death. They repent before death, in other words. So that ayah teaches us, the companion said, every person who sins, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is ignorant. Because if a person understood the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above them, and the might of Allah above them, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could crush every single cell in his body, or by putting a defect in just half a cell in his body, that would be the beginning of their destruction. If they could understand the majesty Allah has, and the awe, the greatest creation, greatest in size, the angels have for this majestic Lord and Master, if they could understand that, and have knowledge of that, then would they be people, or would we be people who disobey Allah? So the companion said, then such a person is ignorant. Whether he did it intentionally or unintentionally, he is ignorant. So the concept of what is knowledge is slightly different to what we're used to. Knowledge is practicing. Knowledge isn't knowing and then sinning. If you know and then sin, that is not knowledge. Therefore, the conclusion of the Sahaba, we can then say, we can infer, is that knowledge is to practice what you know. True knowledge without practice is ignorance. Sorry, knowledge without practice is described in the Quran as ignorance. So we learn Musa a.s. mother was to know all those things happen so that she would know that the promise of Allah is true. She knows the promise of Allah is true, but by struggling and having certainty, by being patient, and perhaps through her dua and a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all those actions of the heart coming into place and working together to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah taught her more that the promise of Allah is true. Took her to a higher level of certainty, something she couldn't have got to without her trials. And how many times do you go through trials and you learn more about Islam than you would, and you wouldn't have learned that without the trials? Not that we ask for trials, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His wisdom, sometimes teaches us through our mistakes and through trials and tribulations. Carrying on from ayah 14. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ وَاسْتَوَى آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ ودخل المدينة على حين غفلة من أهلها فوجد فيها رجلين يقتتلان هذا من شيعته وهذا من عدوه فاستغاثه الذي من شيعته على الذي من عدوه فوكزه موسى فقضى عليه قال هذا من عمل الشيطان إنه عدو مضل مبين. So when Musa alayhi salam reached an age, بلغ أشده واستوى, he reached an age of maturity. واستوى, it becomes symmetrically well defined intellectually and in body as well. آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا, I gave him hukm and I gave him ilm, two things. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and it is thus how I reward other people who are good doers, muhsinin. So when you reach a certain age, he was an adult obviously, and the people of tafsir, they have lots of interpretation what the age was, which is a lot of times really is irrelevant. When he reached that age, I gave him hukm and ilm. The definition of hukm is twofold. Some ulama mention that when Musa a.s. went to meet Pharaoh, one of the things Musa a.s. said to him was, فَفَرَرْتُ مِنْكُمْ لَمَّا خِفْتُكُمْ فَوَهَبِ لِي رَبِّي حُكْمًا وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ, and I fled from you, and when I feared from you, O Pharaoh, Allah gave me hukm. Allah granted me hukm and He made me of the messengers. So one of the interpretations is that Hukum comes from the word hikmah, wisdom, and decisiveness as well, and control. Hukum here means that he became a messenger. And ilm, of course, is knowledge. So when he reached maturity, well, we know that he didn't become a prophet straight away. So the interpretation of hukum now becomes, what we've got knowledge mentioned afterwards. Hukum comes from the mana', to prevent. It meant he had immense control over himself with hikmah, with wisdom. And he was given knowledge. He was given knowledge. Again, that type of knowledge of understanding. You know, some of you may even say that before you were guided to Islam, certain things started to become clear to you, and you didn't like the attitudes of other people who didn't uphold those values. Those values that you were upholding was inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Doesn't make you a prophet, of course. With inspiration, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding you to the right path. Almost like guiding you as Musa alayhi salam was guided to the mountain in the burning bush. So he was guiding you to Islam through hukum and ilm. They're giving you hukum and ilm. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And that is how I reward the muhsineen. This ayah teaches us a huge principle about the life of Musa alayhi salam. We don't have details in the Quran about how Musa alayhi salam grew up. There are lots of stories, fables about Musa alayhi salam, how he lived, and it's very difficult to tell how authentic they are. We call them Israeliyat. Israeliyat traditions taken from Bani Israel. Sometimes the Sahaba would sit with converts from the Yahud and the Nasara and take from them, here are some of the akhbar, some of the stories they had to say, and perhaps speak about them. Not that they totally believed in them, but they were saying these are possible interpretations of how to fill in the gaps. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves gaps intentionally. Those gaps are left intentionally by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us understand that the true morals for us to derive are in those parts where He has spoken, where He, the majestic and wise Lord and Master, has spoken. But we learn something important, that he was given hukum, wisdom in his action, preventing him from doing bad things. He was a person of good action, and he was given ilm, knowledge. And that is how I reward those who do good. So we learn that Musa alayhi salam was a good doer. He was a muhsin, a person of ihsan, a person who did good to others. That even though there was tyranny in the land, even though he was being brought up witnessing tyranny, witnessing evil, crimes, injustice, and hearing about perhaps assaults and attacks on other weaker countries who may have been tyrannical as well, but less so perhaps. What we learn is that Musa ﷺ, through all that, was a muhsin. He was a good doer. He did good to others. He always wanted to help people, in other words. And ihsan in Islam is two types. Ihsan towards your Creator is that you worship Him as if you can see Him. To be always conscious that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be conscious of Allah as if He's actually literally before you. And if you can't do that, then know He's watching you. And the other level of ihsan is to be good to others and to have all the good Islamic actions towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and towards people all around you. For that to be a constant theme in your lives, to do good to others and to push away people's bad by being good to them. Musa alayhi salam was a good doer. Just through the ayah we learn that those 20 years or however long it was, throughout that Musa alayhi salam was a man of justice, and he inherited the general characteristics or the principles of the prophets. So whatever his mother could teach him, it's possible that was his ihsan and knowledge of goodness was through his mother, which shows you the importance of motherhood. It's probably possible that it's through his mother, and it was his mother who taught him guidelines of how to be a good Muslim, one who submits to Allah, how to be on the way of Yusuf alayhi salam, how to be on the way and millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, al-Ishaq and Yaqub. But we learn something else as well from this ayah, that if he was rewarded with good action and wisdom and knowledge through good doing, and Allah says, and that is how I reward the good doers, then surely I and yourselves, wherever you are, whoever you are, by being good to others, won't Allah teach us too? Sometimes when we want more knowledge, it's true that the sources are so obvious, sources of knowledge. But don't we understand that Allah teaches in other ways as well, as He assists in other ways? The Prophet ﷺ said, وَاللَّهُ فِي عَوْنِ الْعَبْدِ مَا كَانَ الْعَبْدُ فِي عَوْنِ أَخِيهِ. Allah will continue to help His slave as long as He is helping his brother. So that's the way of you. Allah gives you assistance by you simply being good to someone else and aiding someone else and helping someone else. So in the break, when you try to practice that and assist each other, and through our lives, we try to practice that more, even though our hearts may be saying otherwise. The waswas of shaitan sometimes tells you, when you look at someone, you might say, well, I don't like that person. Ignore it and be good. Fight your nafs and be good. Be a muhsin like Musa a.s. was. Because if Allah says, وَكَذَلِكَ نَجِزِ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, that is how I reward the good doers, then if you're a good doer as well to other people, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to other people, then Allah will reward you also by conferring upon you knowledge and wisdom. Who doesn't want knowledge and wisdom? So by practicing what we know, we increase in our yaqeen and our certainty that Allah's promise is true. And we increase in knowledge generally. And the doors of knowledge start opening up more. And by being good to others, the doors of knowledge come to us more. Whoever thought of that? Just by being good to the person next to you, your neighbors and your parents and those who are around you. To the non-Muslims as well, to being a muhsin. By doing that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be decreeing good for you and knowledge and wisdom. We all want wisdom. We all want knowledge. We all would love to be fountains of wisdom. Some of you perhaps want when you die someone to say, the fountain of wisdom has died, so and so, even so and so. Yeah? But how do you get that? Yes, by studying hard. That's one way. But sometimes people study hard and they don't even understand the basics. They can't be good to others. Which is why we understand the principle amongst the ulama of the past, where they used to say, learn good behavior and then learn knowledge. Meaning before specializing in knowledge, have a good Muslim lifestyle, which is that whichever situation you find yourself in, be doing the best thing Quranically and according to the hadith. And then specialize. And then learn real knowledge, learn the change of narrators, and learn the deeper issues of fiqh and usul al-fiqh, and the things which are fard kifaya for the ummah to learn. But there's a basic knowledge we all have to aspire to acquire. And that is, a lot of it is bracketed under the huge category of ihsan, of being good to others, and ihsan, of course, your worship towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want Allah to teach you, then be good to each other and be kind to all things around you, all people. Musa alayhi salam, before he became a prophet, had a huge stage of him learning these points. And then only much or a long time after that did victory occur. Do we not realize that as we are too on the ebb of this wave, do we not realize that as we want to climb this wave, that we won't be able to do so until we administer to our problems, our weaknesses, the selfishness we have, the lack of care we have, the greed we have, the lack of concern for each other, especially the weak. And there are so many people who are weak and helpless and suffering, people who today have attended our seminar and they're in need of people to help them, and they're too shy to say to people, I need help. They're trying to depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in their lives they feel that the box may drown, but they have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isn't our deen there to teach us this? How are we going to aspire to higher levels of knowledge without understanding these fundamental principles of knowledge? وَدَخَلَ الْمَدِينَةَ عَلَى حِينِ غَفْلَةٍ مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا. So he entered the town when people were oblivious and absent-minded. It's said that this time was the Qaylula time. Qaylula time is the time between, just after Dhuhr, or around Dhuhr time, when it's extremely hot. The hadith teaches us that that is the time when the shaitans move around, intishar al-shayateen. The Prophet ﷺ said that is the time we should sleep. So you will find that particularly in extremely hot countries, those people who've lived or who visited, you know that at that time, after Dhuhr, it's impossible to do any work. It's so difficult for your mind to concentrate. Even if you've got 3 air conditioners blaring out at you, you can't concentrate. It's very extremely difficult. It's a time where people are supposed to sleep and rest. So we entered the town when people were absent-minded. It's said that this is the time, that was the time. There are other interpretations, but that seems to be the strongest. And whenever we say there's a difference of opinion on an issue, it's important, always go back to the wording given in the ayah, ghafla. It was a time when people had ghafla, absent-minded, they weren't really concentrating properly. And it's important here that Musa alayhi salam, the people were ghafla, had ghafla. Because had people been around, the plan wouldn't have gone as Allah had planned it to go. It needed people not to be there. Again, through times of human weakness, sometimes strength is born, or a way to strength is born. Never lose hope of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the help of Allah. The promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true. Most people do not know. Most people do not have that certainty. And most of us, and all of us, need to learn the smaller and the minor detail of how the change will come. And there is indeed so much detail. And until we apply those details in our lives, we cannot expect to rise by simply claiming we are Muslims and not doing the work of Muslims. Alhamdulillah al-Aziz al-Rahim. وصلى الله على نبي الأمي المبعوث الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل. ما بعد فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of you for your attentive listening. I was just reminded of a hadith, a short, just in an interval, that once Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was asked, هل خصك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بشيء من العلم? Did Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم give you any secret knowledge? He said, لا. No, he didn't give me any special secret knowledge, which is the view of some sects. He said, except for this piece of paper I have in the sheath of my sword, or under the actual handle of the sword, and in it is a dua actually, well-known dua. وَفَهْمٌ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُؤْتِ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ كَمَا قَالَ عَلِي الْعَلَّامَ الْكَبِيرُ. Which means, except for this piece of paper which had a dua written on it, and the understanding of the book of Allah, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to who He wishes, which tells us that understanding the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a long road, and to acquire that we need to start our journey and value every milestone and benefit on the way. Learning deen and knowledge of Islam isn't as straightforward as learning equations and problem solving or learning facts. Describes Adam alayhi salam, or Iblis. First of all, he describes Iblis by saying, قال ما منعك ألا تسجد إذ أمرتك. What stopped you, Iblis, from prostrating when I commanded you? قال أنا خير منه. He said, I am better than Adam, justifying sin, justifying his wrong and his error. خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. You created me, O Allah, from fire, and you created him from earth. So I have a logical argument how my sin is not really a sin. How many times does that happen to people? Where they justify their evils and their wrongs, whether it's wrongs in the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the wrongs in the rights of people and other people around them. In fact, we very happily justify most of the things we do wrong, which is why we are, as Muslims, incompetent Muslims. There's no competence there. We don't have the behavior, the attitude of the Anbiya and the Mursaleen and the Siddiqeen, the people of honesty with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there we are at the ebb of our wave straight again, not rising until we master these points and become people who are courageous enough within ourselves to admit our sins. To admit our sins, to know that our deeds are uglier than they seem to us. He justified his sin. Whereas when Adam alayhi salam was asked about his sin, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَدَلَّاهُمَا بِغُرُورٍ. And then gradually he was seduced away from doing the sin, doing the sin. فَلَمَّا ذَاقَ الشَّجَرَةَ بَدَتْ لَهُمَا سَوْآتُهُمَا. And when they both ate from the tree, Embarrassingly, their sawat, the true private parts, were visible to them. وَطَفِقَا يَخْصِفَانِ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنْ وَرَقِ الْجَنَّةِ. And they started to go around trying to patch themselves and cover their shame with the leaves of paradise. وَنَادَاهُمَا رَبُّهُمَا. And their Lord cried out to them, called them, أَلَمْ أَنْهَكُمَا عَنْ تِلْكُمَا الشَّجَرَةِ. Did I not forbid you from taking from this tree, both of you? وَأَقُلْ لَكُمَا إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمَا عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. And did I not tell you that shaitan is to you both the same word? عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ, same words which Musa a.s. used. When Iblis was reprimanded for his sin, he didn't want to admit his sin. He wanted to ignore it and put it behind him. He said, أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ, I'm better than him, I'm justified in doing my error and my evil. And then Adam a.s. was asked about what made you. Did I not forbid you from eating from this tree? Did I not tell you that shaitan is your عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ, your clear enemy? What did he say? قَالَا رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَّمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. They said, "Oh our Lord, we have done wrong to ourselves. And if you do not forgive us, and if you are not kind and merciful to us, then we are definitely going to be of the losers. There's no way. If you cut your road to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through sin, if Allah doesn't recreate that road for you, who's going to recreate that road for you?" Musa a.s. admitted, and it's possible that through admitting your sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the majestic master, opens up for you roads back to Him, multiple roads back to Him, such that you could have never imagined previously or before the sin. Which does not mean we justify doing sin at all. But after it's happened through qadr, after it's happened you have remorse, you wish you didn't do that, you repented, then now you use the attitude of qadr. This is where we can cite qadr and destiny. It's happened now, what do I do? You repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that no one can have mercy on you apart from Allah. You have that huge tawheed in your heart, that all badness comes from following your own ideas and whims and desires, your hawa. And goodness comes from Allah alone. And it's only when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the tawfiq, the subtle and gentle tawfiq, for you to go against your desires. It's only then that through His will that a person feels righteousness. Which is why after we come out of the salah, we say astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Oh Allah, I seek your forgiveness, I seek your forgiveness, I seek your forgiveness. Because we feel that within our salah, there are times when we have followed our nafs, whereas we should have been following the revelation and contemplating what we were saying and understanding what we're saying and understand what we're doing. The doing in the salah has a huge impact and has a meaning and an explanation even to the doings of the salah. But because the heart goes through the salah, or much of it, in ghafla, in absent-mindedness, and it goes through much of the words of salah in ghafla and absent-mindedness, where we're not following the tawfiq from Allah, we're almost rejecting the tawfiq and following our own nafs, bad coming in, the pool of badness from ourselves, and the pool of goodness comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We say after that, because of our following of our desires, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. We ask you to forgive us, we ask you to forgive us, we ask you to forgive us. So from that we can concur, all good comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all evil comes when Allah leaves us, forsakes us. Which is why we need to keep saying, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Oh Allah, you alone we worship and we ask you to help us. Musa a.s. admitted his sin, his error, and repented sincerely, saying He is the Ghafoor Rahim. And when you repent to Allah, knowing He is the Ghafoor Rahim, it implies I cannot find ghufran, forgiveness, and rahman, kindness from anybody else. I have lost hope of all ways of getting your forgiveness, except from that forgiveness that comes from your kindness and your mercy, which is infinite. So pour upon me, O Allah, and wipe away my sin, and turn my sin into a good deed, as is possible Quranically. Allah can take one of your major sins and wipe it away and turn it into a good deed. So if you scored minus 700, Allah can turn that into you, after your repentance, He can make that a plus 700 if He wills, if our sincerity allows us to. All that is from the tawfiq of Allah. Early lessons for Musa alayhi salam to understand the nature of error, that we can all fall into error. And that when we do, we're to recognize it. And once we've recognized it, we're not to be proud of it or to feel joy about it, but remorse and repentance, and not try to justify what we do. And ask Ghafoor Rahim, the forgiving and the merciful, and to feel Ghafoor Rahim. From that we understand that Musa alayhi salam understood much about the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, that could have been something which was passed through his mother from the lineage of the prophets. Then he said, قال رب بما أنعمت علي فلن أكون ظهيرا للمجرمين. Oh Allah, because of your goodness to me, because you've shown so much favor to me, then I will never be a zahir. I never will be a supporter of the mujrimeen, people who do wrong. Mujrimeen can be translated criminals, but you can understand the meaning is broader than just criminals. People who are criminals in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or criminals in regards to transgressing, in other when it comes to other people's rights. Interesting dua. Musa alayhi salam, again showing his tawheed. And before revelation come to him, having that huge adab with Allah, that huge manners, those manners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Oh Allah, because of the good you've given me, because you have graced me and poured your pleasure on me, what does that refer to? It couldn't refer to him being forgiven because he doesn't know he's been forgiven immediately. He doesn't know that. He could only know that through revelation. It could be the fact that he was able to understand that feeling you've done wrong and feeling the pain of doing wrong and pleasure when you do good is one of the highest levels of iman. That for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you that basira again, that insight is inside yourself, where you recognize things as they really are. And you don't go walk blindly in an unlit room, touching dangers and thinking that they are in fact benefiting you. As you go through the unlit room, touching sharp objects and dangerous animals, basira is what Allah enables you to see the dangers there and see them for what they really are. So Musa alayhi salam praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanked him for the fact that he was able to see things as they really are. See evil as it really is. And because of that he said, he swore, then I will never be an assistant to the mujrimeen. Which meant that now that he felt he had done something wrong, never do I want to see myself assisting wrong again. That if I assist, I will do it properly, without the killing. I will do it in a way where I do not do the greater crime. If someone does something wrong, if there's a way of setting that right, going overboard makes it a double wrong. فأصبح في المدينة خائفا يترقب فإذا الذي استنصره بالأمس يستصرخه قال له موسى إنك لغوي مبين فلما أراد أن يبطش بالذي هو عدو لهما قال يا موسى أتريد أن تقتلني كما قتلت نفسا بالأمس إن تريد إلا أن تكون جبارا في الأرض وما تريد أن تكون من المصلحين. So he was there again, Musa a.s. was there. It could be the next morning, or it could be some time had passed. خائفا, in fear, يترقب, wondering if people are watching him. He just killed someone. He hadn't killed an Israeli, he'd killed a Copt. And it implies it was someone who was known for tyranny, even though that's not an absolute, qat'i, clear-cut implication. And then he found that the one, as he was wondering if he was being watched and surveying, keeping a surveillance up, wondering if he had been found out about, he saw once again that individual who had been in the fight asking for his assistance again. He was in another fight. So Musa alayhi salam said, إِنَّكَ لَغَوِيٌّ مُبِينٌ. Indeed you are ghawi, clearly. Ghawi, Ghawa, similar to the word hawa. Hawa is when someone does wrong, could be knowingly, could be unknowingly. Ghawa is when someone knowingly does something wrong. Ghawa. So he was described as ghawi. He said to the Israeli, you know you're doing something wrong. Meaning if you know that these people are so vicious and can harm you, they're strong and powerful and mighty, they can take your wealth away, they can have you killed, then why do you pick fights with them? Or why don't you avoid fights? Or if they tell you to do something, just do it to save yourself from the greater harm, which is they will want to fight you. Use your wisdom. So why are you knowingly putting yourself into trouble? Frequently that's what we do. Sometimes we have this principle of we must speak up for the truth wherever we are or whatever the wrong might be. It's a good principle, generally. But if you're speaking good gives rise to a greater evil, then it might not be necessary. And in fact, if it gives rise to a greater evil, then it's not necessary. In fact, you shouldn't do that so-called good. Wisdom is required. Wisdom. And that comes back to learning the Sharia well. Especially in a society where we have complex issues, where our people who have come here, or ancestors came here, recent ancestors came here by boat and settled here for economic reasons, and others came as refugees. And we have to understand the history of the place we are in and how our actions are viewed. And we also have to understand the consequences of our actions as we try to revive Sharia in our lives and as we try to make the ascent for the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he saw that individual and said he's ghawiyyun mubin. So when he went there to hit the person who was an enemy to both of them, in the Copt again, he wouldn't be hitting him as hard as he had hit the individual the day before. When he went there to hit him, to stop him from the atrocities he was committing, the Israeli said, "Oh Musa, do you wish to kill me as you killed an individual yesterday? Indeed, you are a person who wants to be a jabbar." A jabbar is like a cutthroat tyrant, a cutthroat murderer, a ripper, a homicidal maniac. That's what a jabbar is. Indeed, you want to be a jabbar in this land, and you do not wish to be of the muslihin. But hold on a minute. Nothing had happened really. Musa hadn't committed another murder. So surely when that Israeli saw Musa coming and asked for himself, if Musa really was a jabbar, wasn't it more appropriate to say to him, "Oh jabbar, don't come near us"? But he didn't. Not a setup. It's not a setup. What it is that we're talking about the attitudes of people. Sometimes we do it ourselves. That when we like somebody, we don't think about their errors. When we need something from somebody, we don't think about their bad points. But when we feel that that person is now not your close friend, or is about to bring out your faults, or knows something about you he shouldn't, or it may be harming you in some way, sometimes it could be based on justice, we do all we can, malfunction, just bring out everything against that individual to prove that what they are doing is typical of someone who's so bad. Why are we like this? Why can't we be like Musa alayhi salam? Why are we like that weak iman Israeli? The person, when he needs someone, he wants their help. When you want someone's help, it's like saying, the impression you're giving is, I think you're a nice person, a good person, and a helpful person, therefore help me. That's the impression he gave to Musa. But when he felt that he was in danger, he gave another impression. You're a jabbar. From implying that you're a nice person to saying you're a jabbar. Look at the difference there. And that is an attitude we must rip out of ourselves. We must love people for the sake of Allah and dislike them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But turn round to yourself and dislike yourselves more. That if you can't sit with an individual because of their sin, then if our sins had a stench to them, then who would be able to sit with us? Before we judge other people and their errors, we should become experts on our own faults. Before we say to other people that they are jabbar and all these other things, we should look to ourselves and see the reservoir of obedience to shaitan which rests there. This is a huge shift we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us make. It takes time to make that. In the morning there, or in the next stage of that story, it says that Musa, فَأَصْبَحَ مُوسَى خَائِفًا فَأَصْبَحَ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ خَائِفًا يَتَرَقَّبُ. In that town, in the morning, or in the next stage of the story, he became khaif, full of fear, يَتَرَقَّبُ, wondering if he's being watched. Khaif, fearful. Later on in the story, we found actually before in the story, Musa's mother was in fear. So Allah told her, لَا تَخَافِي, do not fear. We'll find that as Musa leaves the town, this town he's in, and leaves the kingdom of Fir'aun, we find he's in fear. We find that when the miracle of Musa alayhi salam, of the stick and on the mountain occurs, he has fear, and Allah tells him not to fear. We find that when he's told he has to go to Fir'aun, the greatest tyrant on the face of the earth at that time, and he had a sin as well, which he could have been executed for, he had fear. It's a constant theme throughout the surah, Musa's fear, which tells us in da'wah, there are times where we will suffer extreme fear. There are times when we will suffer extreme fear. It's so pertinent to what the people of Mecca were going through. And in Medina, in the times of fear and danger, like in the Battle of Ahzab, when they were surrounded from all sides. And whenever we feel fear of the unexpected, and that the worst might happen, we learn from the story of Musa alayhi salam. We learn in Surah Al-A'raf, for example, how when there was a second scourge and execution and killing of boys and allowing the women to live, Musa alayhi salam at that stage didn't have fear. In fact, he said the best thing, Ista'inu billahi wasbiru. Seek refuge, seek Allah's help and be patient. But the people didn't have that much patience. We learned that Musa alayhi salam was told when he was getting to the sea to flee with his people. He knew the plan to strike the water with his stick, his staff. He had no fear when the people said, Inna lamudrakun. Indeed, we're being caught up. The enemy is catching up with us. So we see, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps on telling him, don't fear, don't fear. It's teaching the da'i, the people who's calling other people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when you feel that you are unable to fulfill the obligations of da'wah, it's because of our fear of the unexpected. Fear of rejection, fear of the worst, and fear of natural fears. Musa was being taught from the beginning to fight that, to make mu'alaja of that, to cure that fear. Fear is natural, it's a natural emotion. And I suppose you can say that this can be coupled with the theme which is in the surah of the heart being tied up. Being tied and secured from feeling grief, excessive grief. No, sorry, on disclosing the knowledge of Musa alayhi salam, and that he had been, that a boy had been born, as we had mentioned before. So we learn that through the stages of the surah, Musa alayhi salam counters this fear. We are all going to have huge weaknesses in the field of da'wah and trying to be good Muslims and trying to uphold Islam in this society. There will be fear. There will be feelings of being intimidated. People will make you feel like a fool sometimes. They will. They do. You may hear radio and TV programs where open humiliation and insult of Muslims goes on. That makes you feel timid. But trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Musa alayhi salam was being taught to combat fear with trust and dua. Combat fear with trust and dua. Combat fear with trust and dua. Until you get to a stage where it becomes second nature. You can easily, it becomes part of your resources. It's at your fingertips. Fear occurs in your heart, you can bring in iman straight away. You bring in iman, so you say the right thing at the right time with wisdom and knowledge and sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It needs practice though. It needs us to persevere. And we can't all stay at the start line as we have been doing for the last 10, 15 years. As a whole, we are people who stay at the start line. If you analyze Islamic organizations as groups, and you'll find that of the people who are members or people who are affiliated to groups and organizations, and people who want to work together even in a community, perhaps 5% are the workers, the rest are at the start line. It's because of there's all sorts of reasons, but we need to counter that and cure that. Anyway, the point here is al-mujahada. Musa alayhi salam was learning from an early age the principle of mujahada. Of course, he wasn't receiving revelation to fight your fear, but fear makes you all over the place. It makes you it disorientates you. So you naturally will want to overcome your fear through experience. You want to fight it, and you want to counter your fear. So from the beginning, by having doses of fear being put into him, he learned to counter that, and he was going to need that if he was going to have a confrontation before Fir'aun, one on one. Even though there were others there, the dangers were huge. وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْعَى. Then a person came from the other part, from the furthest part of the town, struggling to get to him, taking shortcuts. That's what it's implied. قال يا موسى إن الملأ يأتمرون بك ليقتلوك فاخرج إني لك من الناصحين. So a man came from the furthest part of the town to tell him, "O Musa, indeed indeed the assembly of Pharaoh is coming together to kill you." With trial or without trial not mentioned. So get out of here. Indeed, I'm a person who is of the nasihin. I'm giving you sincere advice here. So obviously that person, the person who had been fighting with the Qubti, fighting with the Israeli, the Qubti, the Copt who had been fighting with the Israeli, had overheard the Israeli saying, do you want to kill me the way you killed somebody yesterday? So he knew immediately that Musa was the quote-unquote the villain, the criminal, even though he is the greatest person. He was the greatest person on the face of the earth at that time. He knew that that was the one who was wanted by Fir'aun. So he quickly spread the news. The other individual heard that, but somehow, even though the location, the general location of Musa was known, because the Copt would have told them, there I was in such and such quarter, and this is what happened. He went back and told them about it, and they started to come looking for him. Musa alayhi salam, so that individual, the righteous person who came and told him, inshallah the believer, who told him about this, took the shortcuts and the necessary means needed to get to Musa. Again, the importance of working hard and using strategy and thinking in times of hardship. And especially when we're trying to help other people. So he said, get out of here. Indeed, I am of the nasihin to you. فَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا خَائِفًا يَتَرَقَّبُ. So he came out of there once again. And once again, خائف, full of fear. يَتَرَقَّبُ, wondering if he's being watched. قَالَ رَبِّ نَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. He said, "Oh my Lord, save me from the wrongdoing people. Save me from the قوم الظالمين." ولما توجه تلقاء مدين قال عسى ربي أن يهديني سواء السبيل. So when he went towards Madian, he said, I still hope that my Lord, my Master, is going to guide me to a path which is the best path. Which shows us that if you think you've done the worst crimes, or you are in huge trouble, we're still not to lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still will accept us back to Him. We are still to be people who make dua to Allah and are optimistic that yes, perhaps Allah will get me out of this and guide me into a situation where I will be a better person. That was the optimism, the tawakkul in Musa. وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أمة من الناس يسقون ووجد من دونهم امرأتين تذودان قال ما خطبكما قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير. So he left the town. Was he prepared for the journey? Did he know in the morning that he was now going to take a huge journey out of the kingdom of Pharaoh to go to another land? No food, no provision, no riding animal. But the best provision is the taqwa. The best zad you can have is taqwa. ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ. Allah says in the Quran, the best provision a person could take, and that was the provision Musa took with him. So if you want to know what did Musa take with him on that journey out towards Midian, the thing he took with him was taqwa and nothing else, unprepared for the elements. And when he went, and when he got to the Ma of Midian, وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ, warada has two meanings. Warada means to enter, and warada means to reach. So I'll ask you the question, what does it mean here? When he warada the water of Midian, did he get to Midian and jump into the water? Or did he reach the waters? He reached the waters. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in Surah Maryam, وَإِن مِّنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. Every single one of you will have to make the wurud, the warada, to the hellfire. Which is why the Salaf, they differed on the ayah. Does the ayah mean every single one of us will have to warada enter the hellfire? Or does it mean that every single one of us will have to go across the fire and reach it? Either way, the Salaf were terrified because of this ayah, that every single one of us, male or female, whoever we are, we will have to go across that bridge. So some understood it as warada mean to enter. Perhaps they didn't know the hadith of the sirat, the bridge over the hellfire. And others, which is a stronger opinion, that every one of you will have to warada of the fire, enter the fire, no, reach the fire, go over it. So it will be a huge abyss over which we will be crossing one by one, over a bridge which is as thin as a hair, sharp as a sword, slyer than a fox, and it will be total darkness except for the light provided by the benefit of your good deeds and our good deeds. وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ وَجَدَ عَلَيْهَا أُمَّةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ يَسْقُونَ. He found at the water of Midian, there were a whole ummah, a group of people, yasqoon, taking water out for their sheep and their animals. And he found at the side two women, tadhudan, preventing what? Preventing their sheep from going there. They were standing at the side. قَالَ مَا خَطَبُكُمَا. So he asked, what's wrong with you? It's literally, it means what's your problem, but it's not so impolite. It's a polite way of saying, do you have, what's the matter? Showing concern. What's the matter? مَا خَطْبُكُمَا. Showing concern. That if you say خَطْبُكُمَا, it implies there's concern there as well. That there's obviously something wrong. Just find two women just standing there by a well, away from a well, and waiting there. Again, Musa alayhi salam was always trying to help people. Can we see that principle within Musa? When Allah said he was of the muhsineen, always wanted to help people. A person who's been traveling, some say 7 days and 8 nights, through the desert, unprepared, without water, without food, and continuing that way. And one of the companions mentioned that sometimes they'd go on a journey, on an expedition, and the food would run out, so they would have to eat certain leaves, and they would get stools, like sheep get stools, droplets. So Musa a.s. was on a journey, a long journey, unprepared. The elements were hot and severe as well. And there was Musa a.s. Instead of going to the water and fulfilling his needs, asking somebody, it seems you have a problem. Almost saying, can I help you? Look at that quality of Musa a.s. Again, this is the climb which we are trying to climb up. Will we at times should forget our needs? Will we at times, when we have a need ourselves, to prefer others over ourselves? That's the level of ithar, to prefer others over yourself. if I have something which I love dearly, for me, my obligation is for me to love for my brother what I love for myself. Does that mean I have to give that thing to him? Any answers? If he needs it. I don't have to give it to him, but I love him to have that as well if he thinks it's good. Yeah. I haven't seen his phone, so if he thinks it's good, if it's beneficial for him as well, my obligation in my heart is to love for him what I love for myself. I love him to have that. But for me to go ahead and give it to him is a higher level, ithar. Allah Azza wa Jalla says about the Ansar, the people of Medina, who accepted the Muhajirin. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They used to prefer others over themselves, even when they were in extreme hunger. And that was about Abu Talha radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he and his wife pretended to eat in the darkness while they gave all their food to a guest. They were pretending. And the children hadn't eaten either. So they spent the whole night hungry. And the children were hungry out of love for their Muslim brother. And they prefer others over themselves. These are qualities. Again, we need to do the mu'alaja on this. To cure ourselves. We don't start with big things. Start with simple things. And if we haven't got loving for our brother what we love for ourselves, there's no point in going to the higher level. But look at Musa alayhi salam. A perfect example of loving others over himself. They said, we cannot... They were asked, what's wrong? So they said, لا نسقي حتى يستر الرعاء. We cannot take water until those farmers, those shepherds move away. وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ. And our father's an old man. So notice how there weren't women. They could have easily have just gone straight there, pushed the other men out of the way, and pulled out the water as they needed. One, they're not strong enough to do that perhaps. And secondly, it wasn't out of the complete hayat and manners and the modesty a woman is supposed to show. A man is supposed to show modesty and shyness. So what about a woman? So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions their story, mentions their shyness and their good adab. And they explain why they were there in the elements. That their father was an old man, which shows that a woman can work if there's a need for them to work. But what we know from other sources is that it's obligatory for a man to work and to bring an income in for his family. Whereas it might be recommended at times, obligatory for a woman in times of need. A man is obliged at all times, need or no need. He is obliged to be the breadwinner. فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. So he gave them water, and then he went to the shade of a tree and he rested there. ثم تولى إلى الظل. And he said, oh Allah, because of the goodness you have given me, or for the goodnesses you give, I am faqir, I am impoverished. So we find Musa alayhi salam praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just for having the shade over his head. That for the days and the nights he hadn't felt shade. And perhaps he had taken some water as well. And for the days and the nights he hadn't felt shade, he now realized the value of shade. And he thanked Allah for it. And expressed that he is in ever need of Allah's favors. And we know that if we thank Allah, Allah will give us more. So let's see what happens. فَجَاءَتْهُ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ. Then one of the girls came, walking towards him with istihya, modesty. قالت إن أبي يدعوك ليجزيك أجر ما سقيت لنا. Indeed, my father wants to reward you and give you almost like a wage. He wants to reward you for the water which you pulled out for us and for our sheep. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَصِ. So when Musa alayhi salam came to the father of the girls and related to him the story, قَالَ لَا تَخَفْ. He said, which is the father of the girls, do not fear. نَجَوْتَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Indeed, you have been saved from the wrongdoers. Here we notice that if someone does good to you or to a family member, you should want to reward them. It's in our Sharia as well. مَنْ صَنَعَ إِلَيْكُمْ مَعْرُوفًا فَكَافِئُوهُ. If someone does something good to you, then reward him. فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِيعُوا فَادْعُوا لَهُ حَتَّى تَظُنُّونَ أَنَّكُمْ قَدْ كَافَأْتُمُوهُ. Then if you are not able to give them an equal reward, some way of recompensing them, then give them reward or make dua for them continually until you feel you have recompensed them, given them recompense. So which is a principle now again which we learn from this surah, that whenever someone does any good to us or to our family member, here it was the righteous man's daughters, it is out of righteous behavior and manners and noble manners that we want to give something back. We shouldn't just be takers. So if someone does do good to us without us asking for that good to be done to us, we should bear it in our mind to do a good back to them. To do a good back to them, and not so that one day he might come to me and say, remember I did that good to you, remember I helped you once, so now I need something. No, that's not the intention. A lot of people do it for that reason. A lot of people, if you do good to them, they will do good back to you, so they don't feel as if you're getting one over them, that you have a favor, you are now indebted to them with a favor. Give good back because that's the way of the prophets. Give good back because that's the way of the righteous. Giving it back, I don't mean give the thing back to them. Do something equivalent. So we should be people who, whenever someone does good to us or our families, we should always want good to emanate back from us and reciprocate that good in another way. So goodness is always shared. And we mustn't become the people where we're only taking. That is a huge principle of our morals and manners, which you all have to go away and practice. And so when he went back to the righteous man, which is the last point we mentioned before the break, before the salah. When he went back to that righteous man, again he was probably fed and looked after. He related a story which shows that at times, if you tell people your hardships, not out of complaining to Allah, not out of complaining and distrusting Allah, but because you feel you need to share your problems, and that sometimes happens. The story, so Musa told his story until the crime he had committed, until him leaving. Then when you do that, it doesn't negate tawakkul. At times, in extreme hardship, you do need to let loose and let your feelings loose and tell someone you trust. And the person who's listening to you shouldn't simply say, well, you're a sinner, that's why it's happening to you. The person should comfort you. And he was told straight away there, La takhaf, do not fear. Look at that comfort. Do not fear. He didn't start giving him lessons straight away. There's lots of lessons he could have given him. If someone comes to you with their problem, you should listen, comfort them. Take away the stress and the distress first of all. Like Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha did to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he came down the mountain after receiving the revelation of Iqra. And then give them some encouraging words, which aren't patronizing and naive. Don't have a fixed line you say to everyone. نَجَوْتَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. You've been saved from the ظالمين. Meaning, you are outside the kingdom of Pharaoh now. Relax, calm down, you've been saved. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. جزاكم الله خير. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وصلى الله على النبي محمد وعلى آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. We spoke about in Madian how immediately we started to see the righteousness of Musa alayhi salam, how he showed that love and care for other people without being, even though he had his own needs, his thirst, his hunger, the elements, he went and attended to someone else's need. He didn't even ask them, are you Muslim or non-Muslim? Do you believe in the Lord of Bani Israel? Do you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Generally, a lot of the principles of etiquette go hand in hand with Tawheed, our calling to the belief in one God. If we look at Surah Ad-Duha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says towards in the second half of that surah, فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. As for the yatim, the person who, an orphan, a child whose father died while he was young, or she was young, an orphan, فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. Then don't overwhelm them, don't harm them. وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. And as for the sa'il, the questioner, the beggar, do not rebuke them. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. And as for the favors of your Lord, then speak about them. The experts of tafsir spoke about this last ayah, saying that the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be one of two. The first is if we look at the beginning of the surah, where he says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. I found you astray, meaning not knowing the details of Sharia, and I guided you. وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. And Allah, He found you destitute and poor, and He enriched you. So one of the explanations of speak about the favors of your Lord is speak about those favors, how Allah took you out of those hardships and guided you. The other explanation, and if you think about it, there's no contradiction at all, is that speak about the favors of your Lord here means the greatest favor which you've been given is the fact that you were taken out of misguidance and given the details of how to get close to Allah. Sharia, Islam, Al-Quran. So it means speak about the favors of your Lord, tell people about the Quran. As He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِنْ أَحَدٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ اسْتَجَارَكَ فَأَجِرْهُ حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ. If any of the non-Muslims, the mushrikeen, seek refuge from you, with you, they want protection from someone else, then do that. Do that meaning to help him first of all, and secondly, do that so he can be made to hear the kalam Allah. He is made to hear the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. At the end of Surah Duha means speak about Quran. Tell people about the Quran. Telling people about Quran doesn't mean talking about the history of the Quran, the background of the Quran, but bring a story in. Tell them a story which is from the Quran. Paraphrase it if needed. Talk about the wisdoms in it. Because da'wah doesn't always work when you're absolutely direct and telling people, come to Islam. You've got to define Islam and tell people about Islam. فَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. Speak about Quran. But we notice the ayat before it, فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. And do not overwhelm and be harmful to the yatim, the orphan. وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. And do not rebuke the orphan. Social points. Points to do with society and community. And when Musa alayhi salam eventually does, in this story, talk to Fir'aun, he tells him to let Bani Israel go. Because it was the greatest social crime at that time. The greatest ideological crime was the error of Tawheed, that he said he was the Lord Most High. And the social crime was the other. So Musa alayhi salam went with the message of Tawheed plus social. Our Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam came with the message of Tawheed plus social. He would improve society where possible. They were freeing slaves straight away. فَلَقَتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. No, but you have not begun the ascent. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةِ. What will explain to you what the ascent is? فَكُّ رَقَبَةِ. Freeing slaves. So with Tawheed, they were told to do social good. When we bring that parallel here now, we must be like that. With your Tawheed and calling to the right ideology, you must benefit people. You must improve people's lives. You must be a source of benefit to those people around you, Muslims and non-Muslim. When people trade, when people want to sell their products, they always speak about the selling points and how you're going to benefit from the product. So much so that if the selling point is only a tiny, minuscule selling point, they'll propagate that until people go out and buy that product because they think it's good for them. Islam is good for everyone. For everyone. We got to now start showing that Islam, because people aren't going to be picking up the book. They find it extremely intimidating to be given the book. Not everyone, but a lot of people. If you just give them the book, say read that, otherwise you're going to go to the hellfire. You got to show Islam. Islam must be shown. So here we see in Surah Duha, فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. Social. وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. Social. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. Tawheed and Aqeedah, Iman. So So they all must go hand in hand. So that's why we have to revive these principles which we're seeing here, and know that we have to build our foundation upon the principles we've learned. So Musa a.s. helping those in need, let there be a principle within you that I help people in need. Even at times when I am struggling, I still try to make room on my plate for others in need. Of course there are priorities, and people you prioritize with. But the important principle is that generally you make room for other people who are in need and are ready to help. You're a person of nobility, you're a Muslim, you're people who want to help other people. You want the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which comes down to you when you are in salah. You want that rahmah to spread to other people and permeate throughout society, so that the people, the Muslims, are representatives of Ar-Rahman, the most kind and the most merciful. So one of the girls, they came back and said to Musa alayhi salam, I want you, my father would like you to come, with us to reward you for what good you've done. Look at that principle. If someone does good to us, let us be good back to them in a different way. So much so that one of the scholars, Sheikh Abdulaziz Ibn Baz, he was on a plane once, and one of his students was mentioning how he was, someone looked at him, and because of his appearance, and honestly the man rahmatullah alayhi had, when he looked at him there wasn't awe there, because a person who's constantly in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and praying tahajjud and reading the Quran, any person who does that will have this awe about them, and this appearance, almost this aura about them actually. A man actually said, he actually gave, a non-Muslim man gave his watch to the Shaykh, said, I'd like to give this to this person, to this man. And then the translator, the person in between, gave it to him. And the Shaykh Abdulaziz accepted the watch kindly, but he insisted on paying him back for the value of the watch as well. Generally, principle, again, someone does good to you, do good back to them. Now, you might not think that was the most tactful thing or way of repaying someone, but they know their situation. You yourselves know what is the best way of repaying someone if they invite you. What are you supposed to do back to them? If they're kind to you, if they help you. Don't think they have one over me, but it's a principle of Islam that I must do good back. Generally, good should be emanating from us anyway. And we look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, good was always emanating from the Muslimin. We look in the lives of our earliest people, the people who learned this Quran and this Hadith. How people like Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, the Imam, the Mujahid, the Muhaddith al-Kabir, al-Allama, when he used to go to Hajj, he used to find out first the people in his province who wanted to go on Hajj, and then he'll collect their monies in their pouches and put them in a box. So he'll be responsible for the spending and buying and purchasing. So when they'd go towards Mecca and Medina, they would stop off at towns, and he would economize and make sure that they slept and rested in the best rest houses. And then they would say, do you not want to take presents back for your families from this province? And they said, yes. He said, then do so. And he would calculate how much money they needed and give them. And he'd make sure that they bought the best for their families. And he'd make sure that they ate the best food as well. And when they got to Mecca and then Medina, he did the same again, until they returned back to their home province, and he would open up that box and give every single person their pouch back to them. These are the Muslims who are our imams, our leaders. We hear about him, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, rahmatullah alayhi, how when he would come to Mecca, he would come with hordes of stock and provision and money and wealth, expensive commodities. And Fudayl ibn Iyad, who was a person well known for staying next to the Kaaba, who had repented to Allah and said after being a bandit, he's going to repent to Allah and stay by the Kaaba until he dies. He said to him, to Abdullah ibn Mubarak, oh Abdullah, you're always telling us to only take a small portion of the world, and to renounce the world, and to zuhud, have zuhud of the world, and keep aloof from worldly things. But here when you come from Khurasan, you come with so much provision and wealth and commodities. He said, I wallahi hatta asuna irdi. Yes, wallah, I do that indeed to preserve my religious honor. Because whenever I hear of an individual who has needs to be fulfilled, I undertake or I set forth to fulfill that need, and never do I relieve, or never do I stop or cease until their needs are fulfilled. So yes, wallahi, I have all these things to preserve my religious dignity. I mean, to be a good Muslim, a person is supposed to be using the resources and the wealth and things they have around them to help people. And if some of the richest Sahaba weren't so rich, then many of the campaigns and the aids and the facilities given in the expansion of the Islamic world wouldn't have taken place without wealth. So we learn again the principle, whether you are poor or whether you are rich. If we're poor, we're able with our manners and our kindness and our attempts to be good, to recompense people and to be good to people in the first place. And if we are rich or have more wealth, then there are lots of other ways of doing good as well. So here the father of the sisters wanted to do good back to Musa alayhi salam. And he did. And he heard the problem which he had found himself into, giving him relief and comfort and a sense of comfort that he was now safe. And then قالت إحداهما يا أبت استأجره. Then one of the girls said, "Oh my father, employ him." They actually needed someone to work for them. It wasn't appropriate that the two ladies went out in those harsh elements where people could harm them even. So they said, "Oh my father," one of them said, "Oh my father, employ him." إِنَّ خَيْرَ مَنِ اسْتَأْجَرْتَ الْقَوِيُّ الْأَمِينَ. Indeed, the best person you can employ is someone who's strong, meaning good at the task, skillful and strong, and is trustworthy. So it's said that when Musa alayhi salam helped them with the water, he drew the water up with such strength and speed, she noticed that. And when he was returning back from, or when the lady, one of the sisters, summoned him to go back to the house, he actually said to one of them, he said an interpretation from some of the Mufassirin, that she said that when she walked in front of him, the wind blew on her clothes where the shape of her body could be seen, and he said that it is not correct out of the dignity of my lineage, through the people we are and the religion we follow, that this should happen. So he insisted that he walk ahead and she gives verbal directions. She gives directions on how he should proceed. So she felt immediately, and so she's an extremely intelligent woman. A lot of people, things happen around them and they don't derive benefit from them. Actions, events happen at the footstep and they don't heed, they don't listen, they don't think about the lesson in that. In everything there's a lesson. Every event in our life is a question which has a blank there for you to fill. And frequently we have created so many blanks in our question sheets, we don't even attempt to answer, let alone having a bad answer. So she knew he was qawiyul amin, strong and trustworthy. But then what could he employ him with? What means did he have? What provision did he have? What wealth did he have to give someone? So it wasn't the case of let's employ him and think about paying him later. No, he wasn't like that. He was just one of the salihin. Against principles of employment, that if you're employing someone, then give them what you have. Don't try to give them if you don't have. And that happens quite a lot, especially in our countries, where people are employed and then 2-3 months later, when they're supposed to get their wages, they are told, "Oh, I don't have the money." That's wrong, against the principle of the Quran. And today, who are the people who uphold these principles? So he didn't have the means to repay him if he employed Musa alayhi salam. But there was another need. He had 2 daughters. And they needed to get married. So he needed to fulfill that obligation towards them to help them get married. And he was impressed with Musa's values. And he knew about him as well, because he said the story about the story of his life basically until he arrived at Madian. So from that he knew a lot about him. And he derived from that he was a good man, a sincere man, and a good man for one of his daughters. So he said, قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين على أن تأجرني 8 حجج. He said, indeed I want you to marry one of my 2 daughters for the mahr, that you work for me for 8 years. And there's a fiqh issue here, a fiqh issue of whether mahar has to be a commodity or it can also be a benefit. And the Hanafis have a strong opinion on that, which is that based on this ayah, it can be a benefit as well. And other imma as well. There's a long fiqh issue which ulama, this episode itself has a long chapter in books like Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi's his explanation of the Ahkam al-Quran, or even the Imam al-Qurtubi, the other Spanish scholar, when he did his Ahkam al-Quran, taking much of it from Ibn al-Arabi, of course. They speak at length about these ayat, principles of trade and principles of marriage. Then he continued. So the mahar is to work for 8 years for him, employment. And of course that's something which had to be agreed with the daughter as well. The daughter will have to agree. Notice that one of the two daughters, we don't know who it was, but obviously one was older than the other. And even if they're twins, one is obviously going to be older than the other, which shows us there is nothing wrong with the younger getting married before the elder. So that's another, culturally sometimes it can be, it's like it's a major sin if the younger daughter or the younger son gets married before the elder. But it's for parents and the families to come together to think about what lies, where is the benefit of the child? Where does the benefit of the child lie? The son or the daughter? It's something to think about as well. Then he said, فَإِنْ أَتْمَمْتَ عَشْرًا فَمِنْ عِنْدِكَ. And if you complete 10 years, then that's from yourself. I require you to work for 8 years, but if you do 10 years or 2 extra years, then that's nafil, extra good deed from yourself. وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أَشُقَّ عَلَيْكَ. And I do not want to be too harsh on you, be too much of a burden on you. Again, if that is a rule in mahar, when someone's giving a mahar, a sadaqah, the sadaqah marriage, it also carries for trade. Now think about that. Musa a.s. father-in-law to be, is going to be his father-in-law, didn't want to impose too much burden on Musa as a mahar. Now internationally, worldwide, in the Muslim lands, how many of our lands follow this ayah? How many of our people here who've come from abroad, who settled here, and they will demand no less than a huge sum of money, and maybe a freehold house as well, and other strange conditions, really burdensome conditions, and that we claim to be the people of Quran, and that's supposed to be for the welfare of the child? Really, we've got to break this. It doesn't mean now every time someone gets married that we only ask for tuppence or 2p or 10p or whatever. It's something we have to wake up in our thinking at least. Sometimes, yes, it can be for the benefit of the woman, that it's best for a higher mahar. That's something to be thought about, to discuss, according to fiqh of masalih and mafasid. What is the advantage in that situation? The greater goods that can be accumulated, for that particular individual in the name of the Sharia. But notice that though, that principle isn't practiced. لَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أَشُقَّ عَلَيْكَ. I do not want to be too heavy on you, mashaqqa, to put hardship on you. Now we know that in our Muslim land, they do put too much hardship on people. And if you do put too much hardship on people who want to get married, then obviously the people who do that are responsible, partially at least, for the zina and the fornication, which will take place and does take place. They share the blame in that. Because you have created a situation where people can't get married easily. And then they have more reason not to be able to challenge a shaitan. Yes, the individual falls into zina and other forms of muharramat, they're responsible too. But there's a community that shares responsibility when we try to analyze how did the problem arise? What is the root of the problem? In employment, we realize one of the rules here which we derive is that when somebody is working for you, it is important to try to ascertain whether you are overburdening that individual, whether you are being too harsh on that individual. Musa a.s. father-in-law to be was very conscious of that. because he was of the Salihin. He said, I don't want to be too harsh on you. سَتَجِدُنِي إِن شَاءَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. You will indeed find me, inshallah, that I'll be a righteous person. He would try to be righteous as a father-in-law. And if someone wants to take a transaction in a similar sort of way, another transaction, then a person should be Salihin. We should work for people, where possible, who keep their words. And if you employ people, be Salihin to the people you employ. Musa alayhi salam said, قَالَ ذَلِكَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكَ. He said, that is something which is between you and me, meaning the extra 2 years. أَيَّمَا الْأَجَلَيْنِ قَضَيْتُ فَلَا عُدْوَانَ عَلَيْهِ. Whichever of the two terms we decide on, there is no harm for me. Meaning, there's no pressure, it's not going to distress me. وَاللَّهُ عَلَى مَا نَقُولُ وَكِيلٌ. And indeed Allah is the witness over what we are saying. That was the discussion, and at the end Allah witnessed their marriage. The marriage. Let's take a few steps back, a few ayat back. Wa Musa alayhi salam gave water to the girls, to the sisters. ثُمَّ تَوَلَّى إِلَى الظِّلِّ. And then he moved to the shade. فَقَالَ رَبِّ إِنِّي لِمَا أَنزَلْتَ إِلَيَّ مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَقِيرٌ. And he said, Oh my Lord, indeed, for the goodnesses which you send down upon us, I am so destitute, I am in such dire need of those goodnesses. The shade he experienced after the long and arduous journey was a favor and blessing of Allah he thanked Allah for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards those people who are grateful to Him, doesn't He? He was grateful for shade. He had left the land of the Pharaoh without any provision. Of course he had the greatest provision, at-taqwa. But he had no food, no home, no extra clothes. He had nowhere to live, that's the home again. He had no people to comfort him and care for him. And by the end of the day, through his gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you thank Allah for a little, He gives you more. He had a home. He had a righteous and beloved, caring and loving father-in-law. He had a wife. He had refuge. Was that all because of Musa's gratitude? Then how much more grateful should we be then? Just for the little things around us. And if we think good of Allah and are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will give us too. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the things which we want for ourselves and our families, which will aid us to be better people in His sight. Ameen. Musa alayhi salam was to spend some years now, 10 years in the desert. Well, in the Midian, which is a town. It's possible there were other people there as well. It wasn't a total desert. Islamically, it's not really good to live in a desert where there's no civilization, or there's no society, I should say. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he was in Kufa, there were some people who decided to leave the main Kufa, which is in Iraq, and spread to the outskirts and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there. He went there, had their mosque broken down, and told them that wasn't the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us to live our lives. Meaning totally away from society. But at the same time, there were some companions who felt that they should flee from areas of fitna. Where in cities and towns there was so much trials, tribulations and atrocities being committed. To avoid that, they moved away. And some of the companions did that. And there's a hadith that says in Sahih Bukhari, in the book of Al-Iman, there will come a time when the best wealth of a Muslim will be sheep, which he will look after, and the valleys of mountains. The hadith in Al-Bukhari. So generally speaking, it depends on, are you going to be a good person by living outside in the countryside. Quranically, we notice that frequently when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about His signs and His favors, when He speaks about His signs, He did speak about the cockroach. Does He speak about ugly creatures, or the miracle of how sewage goes into the ground and becomes whatever it becomes. No. He uses beautiful science, which tells us an important point, that we are people, when we're supposed to be understanding at-tawheed, we are people who need natural things around us, greenery. We need to see the sky, we need to see animals. We need to see these things because they increase our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we see them, we feel Allah's lordship. The effect is more immediate than when we are merely surrounded by artificial things, which also are the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they've been altered by man, but they're still the favors of Allah. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, رَبَّنَا وَسِعْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ, or the angels say, as Allah says in Surah Ghafir, رَبَّنَا وَسِعْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ رَحْمَةً وَعِلْمًا. Oh our Lord, indeed you have encompassed everything with rahmah, with kindness and with knowledge. So everything around us is encompassed with rahmah and kindness of Allah, mercy, and with knowledge. In His knowledge, there's a planning there. Everything, if it's analyzed, there's a planning there. Even a mess, even though your family might not believe you, but even a mess has some organization to it. There is knowledge there. There has to be. And there's kindness there. So when a person does see these natural things, they're reminded more immediately of Allah's spending, Allah's love. So when they see a leaf, they see that Allah spent His rahmah there and knowledge, His kindness and knowledge. When they see a field, they see that for that to exist that way, Allah's knowledge and kindness must have poured there. That means an action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has recently been there and it's still there and it's there again and again and again and again, infinitely. Continually there's an interaction. يَسْأَلُهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Everything in the heavens and the earth depends and asks on Him. كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. Daily He's doing something, meaning that daily there are things to be done everywhere. He's looking after everything. يُدَبِّرُ, and another ayah, يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ. Everything that happens between the sky and the earth, He's the one controlling and doing. He's the doer of everything which is happening amongst us here in the whole world, everywhere. He's the doer. So when it's more immediate, that feeling is more immediate when you see greenery. When you're outside in the fields and you see nature more, and you see animals. Because of that immediacy, there is a huge benefit in that, which is why the ayat of the Quran al-Karim speaks so much about nature. We need that. We need to see these things in nature. If we can't go out, there are times that we should be bringing things in as well, which is a good habit which the people we live with have acquired of having nice gardens and bringing pots and plants into their homes. Wallahi, they remind you more of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than a wall does. A wall, even though even that is surrounded by Allah's mercy and knowledge and kindness, it's less immediate, the tawheed effect. Until, with regards to the nature I'm talking about, until you get to a stage where you see Allah's action in everything, pouring constantly, continually, surrounding everything, until you feel there's nothing which moves except by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you realize there's no one who compares to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you realize there's no one that anyone can depend on except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Musa alayhi salam spent 10 years in the desert, working. When I say desert, I mean it's a town in the desert. Working hard with nature there. And it was plenty of time to reinforce Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Allah's lordship in his heart. He already knew Allah is Ghafoor Rahim, but you need to witness things around you to feel Allah's greatness, His love, His kindness, and that He is constantly interacting with us. It is unending. And therefore He is not absent, His actions aren't absent from us. They're constantly going on around us. Until continually we feel Allah's action is around you. He's moving things, He's dropping things. Any movement or stillness is controlled by Him, any sound is controlled by Him. Until you feel that He is the sole doer. And then you realize and understand what it means to feel that Allah is everywhere. When people say that, even though Allah Azza wa Jalla says He's above the arsh, Ar-Rahman al-Arsh istawa, He's above the throne, but His actions are constantly with you. There's no one who's more with you than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His actions, His raising, His lowering, His giving life and giving death, no one else is doing that. Only He is doing that. He is unique in that. So He had time for that and for all the benefits there. And He also had time to administer or look after sheep and animals. And that shows you the importance of employment and work, which is a principle everyone has to understand, that in a society like this, we need to excel where possible, especially in our earlier years when the opportunities are greater, to get into positions of stronger positions in society, so that you can do more good for yourselves and do more good for your families and for the community. So when you do want to build a Muslim school or something like that, you're not stuck for money. And it's a sad situation that even though people, we know it's wrong, a lot of the haram businesses which are around, but much of the time when you do need to make an appeal for a Muslim cause, it's the people with the haram businesses who are able to give money, because the so-called pious people don't have any money. Yes, alhamdulillah, there is a change there. A lot of people are understanding that point, and more and more brothers and sisters are getting qualified so they can serve Islam better. But at the same time, we notice that some of the youth and some of the younger people are forgetting that lesson which a lot of us as a whole learned the hard way.
فلما قضى موسى الأجل وسار بأهله آنس من جانب الطور نارا.
So when Musa had fulfilled and completed that period of time, he noticed at the side, so he went with his family, and he noticed from the side of Tur. You got the word Jabal and you got the Tur. It said that Jabal is a mountain which has no greenery on it, and Tur can have greenery on it. He noticed at the side of the mountain Nara, a fire. قال لأهلهم كثوا. He said to his wife, remain here, stay here. إني آنست نارا لعلي آتيكم منها بخبر أو جذوة من النار لعلكم تصطلون. So he said to his family, remain here, because I can sense a fire, I can see a fire over there. So let me go there so I can get some news from over there, or some fire, so that we may get some warmth. We learn in Surah Taha that he said, I want to go there to get a qabas. A qabas is a torch giving light. So we see that Musa alayhi salam, they were lost, otherwise they wouldn't need news. And in Taha he says, in Taha he mentions that he wants to find, he's hoping to find at the fire some huda, some guidance. Meaning they feel they're lost, so they need to know the way back to their route. Where were they going? It said that they were going back to their family in the land of Fir'aun, in Misr. And they felt that they hoped that that Musa alayhi salam hoped that he could go discreetly back to see his mother once again, his brother and his sister. So when he went there, we said that he was lost, and they weren't warm, they were extremely cold, because he says here, I want to go there to get some fire there, so we may get some warmth. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَصْطَلُونَ, so you may find some warmth. And in another ayah, he wants to get a qabas, which means I want to get a torch giving light. A torch giving light. And they wanted to get khabar and huda from there. He wanted to get from there, which shows that they were lost, because they needed news how to get back on the path to Egypt. And they wanted to get guidance back to, of how they can get back to Egypt.
فلما أتاها نودي من شاطئ الواد الأيمن في البقعة المباركة من الشجرة أن يا موسى.
So when he got there, he was called out from the side of the valley, on the blessed valley, from the tree, from the tree, Oh Musa, Ya Musa,
إني أنا الله رب العالمين.
Oh Musa, I am Allah, Rabbul Alameen, the creator and the master of the universe.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم